Hey, it's me, Rasan. I don't know, man. Huge hole in my,
Yeah.
understanding. My fellow Americans.
Papa Bear here.
As long as whatever you're doing doesn't hurt anyone else, I don't care.
Different perspective of what an interesting topic is than I would assume.
This is Balanced Exchange.
All right.
So let's
Everybody, thanks for joining us here on another episode of A Balanced Exchange. I'm Papa Bear.
And this is Kr0nus. And this episode, we're going to talk about racism, but specifically racism that kind of revolves around what happened yesterday. Today, we're speaking on January 7th, 2021, and there was an insurrection attempt on the Capitol building yesterday on January 6th, 2021. So we're gonna talk about what happened then, and then also how I perceived the racist overtones that also occurred at that same time. So it's gonna be more of an exchange than usual on this episode.
Yeah. So because we're both kind of going over this topic from a similar, I guess a balanced standpoint, like we say that's the stuff is, instead of it being a back and forth where you do one episode lead, this one kind of is going to start now. At least a good part of it is definitely going to be both of us kind of exploring how our perception of what happened went. So we'll take this opportunity to break away for a real quick, public service announcement from me to make sure that everybody understands where I'm sitting at and in regards to our topics as we cover them.
So at this point in watching our videos, you may or may not know that I am an active duty United States Marine. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years, so I know that it's really important for me to make sure to get this out there. If it's your first time watching this, please stick around and make sure you understand the disclaimer. If you've watched a whole lot of our episodes so far, feel free to go ahead and jump ahead to the new content. So what I need to talk about today is that I am not authorized and have no way of being approved to speak on behalf of the Marine Corps. So any opinion that I give or any concept that I discuss today is the position and the opinion of just me, myself, just a man who has a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in leadership and organizational management, and has spent my whole life looking at government structures and social contracts and how these things are supposed to work, what the philosophies and things behind them are, and read a lot of books on that kind of stuff. And it's definitely one of my personal and key passions. And so when you hear me maybe give a position or a concept on something, that is only my own position. I am not a public affairs officer for the Marine Corps. I am in no way giving what the Marine Corps' official position on anything would be. And honestly, a lot of the topics we're going to cover here, I'm pretty sure the Marine Corps doesn't have a particular position on. So if you do have any questions about what the Marine Corps' policy on certain things could be, you can definitely research that and find those out, or leave a comment or send us a message if you can get a hold of us somehow. We can maybe be able to answer those questions for you. So with that said, let's get you back to this week's content.
So to add to that default statement for any of the stuff that we talk about on this particular topic, I really have to be careful about what I say, even as someone with a disclaimer out there. As a Marine, I do have to not say certain things about this particular kind of topic, and it'll be pretty obvious when I dodge them. And I think Kr0nus is going to pick up on those pretty fast and fill in what needs to be filled in. So I just can't say certain things, especially certain words and certain things. So that's kind of where I go on that.
Yeah, and so the civilian audience that's listening to this understands he's an active Marine. Obviously, I'm not anymore. But when you're in the Marine Corps, there are things that you cannot talk about if you're active, especially when it comes to sitting members of our government, especially the president. So we're gonna if he tiptoes around stuff, don't think that he's doing it for some political gain or because he doesn't want to talk about it. He has a career in the Marine Corps, and there's no reason for him to mess that up over a podcast. So I'm not going to call him out on anything like that because I understand. Because like I said, I'm a Marine too. I'm just not active anymore.
Yeah, and I'll do my best to make sure I don't say it, but you understand where I'm sitting with it. So
yeah,
that's the best I could do.
Yeah. So
paint the picture.
Yeah. So we'll get into it. So the reason why I kind of, because originally this topic was supposed to be solely on racism and talking about things that have happened since slavery to African Americans and people of color in America. But because of what happened yesterday, it was such an egregious amount of insanity that happened in America that I really wanted to get Papa Bear's thoughts from somebody that knows way more about the government than I do on specific things that occurred, specific terms that have been used, and the role of the government in all of this, so we can break it down for the listeners and the viewers, and for me as well. Because there's a lot of terms that I've thrown out. You watched the podcast yesterday, I'm sure, and they might not be correct, but to me, like the definitions were correct for the vast majority of the stuff that I was talking about. But there were sort of inflammatory statements. So,
yeah, I was keeping notes on some of the words you used. I was like, oh, that's a good job. So I saw some moments that were, I think, prior to some of our other conversations, you would have maybe used a different term, and then we've talked a bit, and so you were like, oh, this is the right way to frame that. And there was a couple of moments I was definitely like, oh, I think that was a product of some of our conversations. That was good.
Definitely. I mean, I try to learn, even though I'm old. I try to learn as much as I can.
That's one of as a father, right? That's one of my key examples I try to set is lifetime learning, right? Lifelong learning, never stop. There's no reason to ever stop learning something new. It can be a new, tool or a new system or a new thing. Cause I just started doing Fusion 360 to build this arcade cabinet. Also, working with tools that I haven't worked with before, but it's also knowledge stuff. So, I mean, I'm still getting college classes done. My son's going to college too. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You should always be striving for learning more. So I totally appreciate that. And that's the same thing I'm going for here too, is, learning about things that maybe I don't know about. And I would appreciate you helping me get through that.
Nice. So this is why the podcast is what it's called. So we're both learning from each other. So I'll paint the picture, because this is what literally, I watched this happen live. Because I was sitting here, work was pretty slow for me yesterday, and so my setup in my Infinity base, my office, my podcast studio, whatever you want to call it, basically what I'm looking at are like my two screens that I have are like my main computer, and like to the lower right is my workstation for work, and then to my kind of further right is a TV, like an actual TV.
Yeah.
And so I had on YouTube on my computer, I was watching Congress, specifically the Senate, do the whole certification. And so I was watching them speak, and because I was wondering, I was like, which one of these people are going to object to the certification? That's what I was wondering. So I saw Ted Cruz's dumbass come up and object ridiculously about it, and then they went back and forth between Democrat and Republican, and then all of a sudden this one guy I forget his name, but he was speaking, and I was listening to him speak, and all of a sudden they cut him off, and then they said that we have to stop the session, and I forget the actual term that they used. It wasn't stop the session. It's like, what was it? Not reconvene.
Recess.
Say again?
Take a recess.
Yeah, they had to take a recess, but you could tell that something was wrong, because they cut him off in the middle of his speech, and they usually don't do that. Because they get their 5 minutes of fame, right? And right when that happened, it wasn't really chaos, but you could tell something was wrong, because people were kind of moving around with intent on like, hey, something wrong is going on here. And then I was like, what is going on here? Like, why'd they stop this guy? And then it kept going, like they kept the camera rolling, but nobody was speaking. People were just kind of like moving around, like walking quickly. So I was like, I need to see what's going on. Maybe something's going on outside the Capitol building. Because I knew earlier in that day, President Trump had this speech that got a lot of folks riled up, and he was using a lot of language that could have incited, and well, it did incite what happened. So I turn on the news, and I see all these protesters at the Capitol building, and I was just like, first of all, why isn't this cordoned off? And then I saw them go up the steps and like get inside the perimeter of the Capitol building. And I was like, something is very wrong here, because there's like, where are the police? Where's the National Guard? Where's any sort of security here? And then like minutes later, they breached the building. And I was like, what? Like, how is that possible? This should be one of the most secure buildings in America. And they got breached by like normal people. Like they weren't even like they were just normal people. Like they weren't coming in there with tanks or firearms that I saw anyway. They just came in there and just stormed the building, and it all seemed surreal because it seemed like people weren't stopping them because I saw police kind of standing around and not stopping them. So, how did you hear about
So
this?
it's one of those catch-22. I think knowing that there was a protest, there should have been a different response. But on a day-to-day basis, have you ever had a chance to go to the Capitol building?
No, but I'm sure on a day-to-day basis it'd be a lot different.
It is, and
Yeah.
it's totally accessible. Like so, we did a tour of, and we went to the House side because the Senate side was in session, the House was in a recess. So we did a tour, like, and get to walk in there. You just like walk up the steps, go in the main doors, meet the aide of whatever representative you send an email to, because you could write an email to your representative, say, I'm going to be in Washington D.C. Can you send me somebody? I would really love to see the congressional building. And if most representatives would be like, yeah, I'll send somebody out, and they send an aide out, and they just walk you around the building, take you like all the cool places. And yeah, it's super simple.
Right.
Any citizen is totally allowed to access this building. They're supposed to be able to. It's our house, right? It is our place of government, and so it's intended to be accessible. But I think, like you said, with known and registered like planned protests,
Yeah.
that there should have been some kind of a plan. Like, okay, well, you guys can be over there. We'll have security nearby. Just because the way pretty much any protest has gone in the last 6 months, they've started to get out of hand because the passions are high in the country right now. Right, everybody is very, um, you know, emotions are running high right now, and so it would have been a normal response, I think, to say, okay, well, we're going to have a larger security force there, but that didn't happen. So it was definitely surprising to see like that second balcony group of people too. Like they were like
Yeah.
outside the building. Like, did you just climb up it? Because you can't just get there. Like that's not
Yeah.
a.
That's
I
what was.
didn't see anything in between. I just see people on balcony. I was like, when did that happen? Where?
Yeah, it was astounding. Like I mentioned on the other podcast that I was at an embassy for a little bit when I was in
Mm-hmm.
Djibouti, and there's no way that you would just if you had a mob of this. It was a mob of people. Okay, a mob of people just like storming it all at the same time. I was authorized to shoot people. Like
Yeah.
seriously, like, and I understand it's in a different country, it's on foreign
Yeah.
land, but I'm still protecting the building and those inside, and that
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be the job of the people protecting that building was to protect those inside because obviously
Mm-hmm.
those people were not they didn't schedule a visit. they you know they were there to do nefarious things, and the fact that there was like no response to this was just so odd to me. Like I don't know. I had there, I had to put on sort of a tinfoil hat thing, but I don't know why there wasn't a National Guard response as soon as it was. I watched a video of the governor of Maryland today, and he said that when he heard about this, so this is what's weird about, and correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I understand at this point in time. Usually, when there's a National Guard response, a governor needs to invoke that, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that there is no governor of Washington D.C. because it's not a state. There's the
Correct.
mayor, and then you have to have I think it's the Secretary of Defense that has to authorize National Guard usage in Washington D.C. So the governor of Maryland he got calls from the people from Congress, and he was like, okay, well I'm gonna I'm gonna get everybody ready. I'm gonna send you our state police right now, and that's gonna help a little bit, but it's only like 200 people. You know, I'm going to start mobilizing the National Guard, but I need to get authorized to do that. And so he had a general call up the Secretary of Defense multiple times, and he could not. They kept denying the person to authorize the National Guard to get sent there. It took them an hour and a half to get the National Guard mobilized from Maryland, and I'm just like, there's literally our officials' lives are in people's lives are in danger. It's not even just officials. Human lives are in danger, and we know this, and it takes you an hour and a half to respond to this. Like,
Yeah. So the weird thing in that particular like sequence of events too is that we want that restriction in place, right? We do not want the states to just be able to send in their
yeah,
their state level troops to the capital of the country at any point in time. Because then you get to the point where it makes it a lot more, I wouldn't say likely, but it would seem like the opportunity for some kind of a military-led coup
Yeah.
with real military people would be a whole lot easier, because if you could just send in the National Guard, for any reason, just because any one of the bordering states, especially with the way DC is set up, wanted to, that would cause issues. So they need to get like authority, like, hey, I'm going to send in troops and you guys are okay with that, right? And like you said, maybe tinfoil hat type stuff, but like they're saying nope. Like, nope, do not send people in here right now. This is what we expect to happen, and this is okay by us or something. Because if we are telling them no, we don't need your help, or maybe they feel like they've got it under control. That's the best way I could put it, I guess. Because you do have to think beyond this particular crisis, and that's a thing that the founding fathers did really well, was think really long term. And I think many of our sitting legislators don't right now. They don't think beyond this particular moment and what people are asking for and what it seems like the mob wants. So it's really hard to I wouldn't be surprised if someone doesn't present some kind of a bill to say we should remove that requirement, have to contact the Secretary of Defense to bring in the National Guard. And then because they're thinking about this thing and what this looks like, and they want to make a public message and make it seem like they're doing something important, right?
Yeah.
But you're potentially risking the next president or the next Congress of having full-on military forces with tanks and with jets able to just access the Capitol at any time. And if no one's talking about that, like those are the things that it's like you have to close down this topic and say what else could happen. And if those what ifs aren't worth the risk here, you have to say this is still a system that's okay. I think in this case it is, but maybe there needs to be another person you could call. Like if you call that one person who was like, nope, I know this was a thing and I'm okay with it, be like, well, I'm going to call the other person who's also authorized to make this call because you've been compromised, maybe, anything that's up to only one person ever kind of always makes me nervous.
Yeah, I don't like, especially being a data storage guy. Like, no redundancy, like, makes me it drives me insane. Having no redundancy, I'm just like, come on, guys. But I think one of the solutions to that particular scenario is that I think that we need to make Washington D.C. a state. I don't know why it's not a state at this point in time. The 50 number is nice and round. If you're an OCD person, it's cool. But we need to make them a state. Same thing with Guam and Puerto Rico, if they want it. And I think that if they want statehood, then let's grant it to them. It would eliminate at least that small issue on some level.
My thing on statehood, right, is that there's nothing that stops any of those places from becoming a state. They just need to write their own, like they have their own legislatures. They elect their own, like even if they're territories or like it is with DC, it's a district. It has its own governing body. That governing body establishes a constitution, makes it themselves, and says I've met all the requirements to become a state, and puts that to the Congress. That's all you have to do. But no one ever wants to do that work.
Well, if that's the only thing that's stopping it, then that seems incredibly silly to me.
The problem is it means getting people to agree to something, and even in Guam. So did you know there's a new Marine Corps base being built on Guam?
Yeah, I do. I've been to Guam.
So they are naming it Camp Blaz after a Marine Corps general who was from Guam, and he spent all of his time after his Marine Corps career trying to. He was one of the like senatorial and congressional representatives from Guam, because they don't get to vote but they get to be in Congress.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of his time afterwards in those seats and trying to convince the citizens of Guam, like, look, these are the things we need to do. We need to get everybody on board. And they're like, why? We have the protection and we don't have all the other stuff that goes along with it. I think if anybody would, Guam would be the closest. But yeah, most of them just aren't interested in all the extra stuff that comes along with it.
Yeah, that sucks. Because, I mean, not that one simple protection could have like saved a whole lot of time for Washington D.C. And I heard that there's somebody in the House that's going to put up a bill for it. But if what you said is true, then they have to do it themselves, which I think that hopefully the mayor will be more open to, and maybe hopefully the citizens as well.
Yeah.
I know that what is it? The chief of police stepped down from DC because uh, I don't.
Felt
I
like it didn't do a good job responding, or
well, I know they didn't do a good enough job responding. I mean, there's video that you can watch of police officers taking selfies with these terrorists. I
yeah.
call them terrorists because they were doing terrorist shit. So, and there was also videos of those same police officers in the same group. They opened up the barricades to let these people in, these terrorists
Well, I
in.
mean, so using the term, right? So if we're using the term terrorist, like, so what is the definition of terrorism? You did one of those dumb freaking classes at one point, right?
Yeah, I got to pull it up again, but give me 1 second because I
Right.
had
So
to.
it's taking actions. It's a group generally, if you want to define the group or the actions that they take, right? It's some kind of violence or some kind of coercion or some kind of other actions taken in order to achieve some kind of political, religious, or
Yep.
social objectives, right?
Yep.
So it's definitely a political objective that they had.
Yeah.
And when you bring pipe bombs, and when you there was a case of Molotov cocktails found.
Yep. They left
Um,
notes to instill fear.
so like when you do those things towards your political goals, I would agree that that's probably a pretty accurate description of those actions and those people. So because if showing up to it, like, and it's a government building, right? So that generally right then starts tying it to like, well, you have an objective there. Um, yeah, so I don't think it's an incorrect usage of the word.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, I looked it up, because I had to remember it, and
Yeah,
so I had to look it up, and I was just like, these fit the the definition of, especially the FBI definition of terrorism. It fits all these, most of the things pretty much to
yeah,
the T. And people were unhappy with me when I said that, but I'm like, listen, just because they're American citizens does not mean that they are not terrorists. All right, there's
right.
domestic terrorism. There's a reason why that word exists. That
Yeah.
applies to that group of people. It really does.
Timothy McVeigh. I mean, there's
Yeah,
several within the last 20 years that you could look up pretty easily. So
yeah, and I think that the people that were there on site, the police officers and whoever else was there, they did not treat this as a terrorist threat at all because, and this is where we get into racism, is because most of the people that were doing this shit were white people, and I don't like saying that. And it makes people uncomfortable. Let me ask you, when I say that, how does that make you feel?
um, fine. Like, so I've come to
Be
a better
totally
understanding
honest.
of it
Okay.
over the last year or so, right? And I
Okay.
think we talked a little bit about it. Um, so partly, and I made a kind of a joke in the chat last night. I was like, well, I'll just identify with my Native American heritage and be like, all y'all are supposed to be here. But um, it's like any other lumping or stereotypes of anything, is as long as you don't identify with the context, then it's not going to bother me, right? So when you say it's like, oh, they're all white people, like, yeah, but I'm not that white guy, like I'm not
Yeah.
that person, so I don't have to worry about that because I know you're not talking about me. And I know that a lot of people are comfortable with that, and maybe we're more comfortable with it because being Marines, we're like, you just get used to that, we're all equally worthless, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, you get used to that concept of like, that's not really what we're talking about. So when you be like, hey, listen up, shitheads, you're like, well, you're not talking to me. Like, okay, I'm gonna listen.
I'm not a shithead. Yeah.
um, so for me, it doesn't bother me, but I think also like I've come to grips with some of the terms that are around it that I didn't understand, and I think I took what happens first to a lot of us, which is I took the emotional response to it, which is where I wanted to make sure we clearly talked about terrorism, because I think when we say that, hey, they're terrorists, that might have been emotional responses for some people immediately to say that, right? But like if we look at the definitions and say this and this and this, it fits those definitions. We're using words, like we're being smart about it. We're saying this is really the real definition. It's not about like fighting one side against the other or being emotional. It's just saying like this is literally what it was. So for me, learning some of that stuff helped, because I think before I did get upset a lot of times when it was used in maybe a derogatory way, but it doesn't bother me anymore.
Well, I'm glad, and I'm glad you're honest about it because I don't. When I say those things, so, I had a conversation with another friend of mine earlier today, He was also a Marine. He was a tanker. He joined the Marine Corps. A couple of funny stories about him, but I'm not gonna tell them on the podcast. But he joined the Marine Corps a couple months before I joined the Marine Corps, and he's of Mexican descent. Pretty sure he's Mexican. Didn't really matter to me when we were growing up. He's a cool dude. Um, he was like, he liked what I said on the podcast. It's like, just be careful of like not lumping in everybody, in the same group. And I'm like, I'm trying to be super careful about doing that. When me saying that it's mostly white people, it makes me cringe internally just saying that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be like the same racist people that I'm identifying. I don't want to lump them. I don't want to be like, oh, well, they're all the same. So I know they're not all the same. I totally get that. But I also cannot ignore the fact that the difference of response of people that were fighting for civil rights for brown people and the people that were using terrorist tactics to overthrow our government that had a different skin tone. Okay? I cannot ignore that. No matter how uncomfortable it makes me feel. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, if you're listening to this podcast and you're Caucasian, I don't want to apologize, but I understand your trepidation and that it makes you feel uncomfortable. I'm just gonna say I recognize it and just understand that it makes me uncomfortable as well. So I hope that helps a little.
So I think part of it, and we'll get into some of the the definitions and the real concepts and the things that tie all of these things together. Because like you said, we're going to get pretty deep, I think, into concepts associated to racism, especially in the United States, as we go through the rest of the podcast. But I will say, like, as you mentioned, if you are Caucasian, or if you are one of the people maybe identifying with any of the things said that's with white people looking at something this way, or if you something said about white people and it makes you uncomfortable, if the context in which that word was used makes you uncomfortable, then either you need to look at yourself and think, do I think that way? Is that why I identify with what it is he's saying and it's making me feel uncomfortable? Or maybe we just need to cover the topic better because maybe we're not providing you with enough information to understand and not feel so uncomfortable about what it is we're saying, because the reality of things is that there are these differences and there are these perceptions that people have, whether they think they do or don't. And that's the difference in it, I think, is awareness of your inability to recognize your own perceptions. So.
Yeah, and to be totally honest with you, I had to go through like this whole journey last year of like really understanding racism, and this is coming from a fucking black guy. Like, and the problem. This is what I realized about going through this whole thing, right? Is before it wasn't that I was indifferent. It's just I didn't understand the signs and the pervasiveness of, like, first of all, the white supremacy in the United States, and then second of all, how it affects the vast majority of people of color. And the reason why I didn't really recognize a lot of it is because I'm a successful African American guy. I make a good amount of money. Previously, I thought that, I didn't meet that much racism in my normal life. But then going back on, like, a whole lot of stuff, like, thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, I did. I just kind of left it to the wayside. I was like, whatever. I'm so successful. I'm going to do my thing. I'll let it roll off my back. But what I realized that made me really uncomfortable, like, brought me to tears, is, like, letting shit like that roll off my back. What if that happened to, like, somebody like my daughter? Or somebody else that it does not have the resources that I have. And that's when it was like, okay, this is a problem. And then once I also realized that one of the main things about racism in America, especially, is the fact that I didn't have any sort of wealth in my family, like, at all. And I understand, okay, somebody's going to get mad already. Yeah, I understand if if you're white, there's a good chance that neither did your family. You might not have had those things. Like, I totally get that. But the fact that by federal law, my family could not gain wealth And when they did gain wealth, the state and federal government punished those and killed them through multiple. There's multiple incidences. Like if you want to look up what happened in Oklahoma when they literally bombed a city, a black city in Oklahoma, because they had too much wealth, and they bombed it and they looted them because this black community came together. They were like, all right, we're gonna just make our own wealth, and we're not gonna use help from white people. That's basically what the thing was, and they killed the vast majority of the people that lived there. They looted all their shit, and they fucking burned the city to the ground. And that wasn't the only scenario, the only city.
So like the initial concept that you describe of like going it on your own and setting up your own space just made me think, like, have you read Atlas Shrugged?
No, but I keep hearing about it. It's Ayn Rand,
Yeah,
right?
so like
Yeah.
it made me think 100% of that. Like, and it's not by many perceived to be a bad thing. A lot of people have issues with it from it being a very like elitist, what's it called capitalism side, but then realistically, a lot of it functions in the like communist side too. It's really weird. So there's a lot of people who don't like it because on both sides, which is really funny. So that generally tells you it's probably good.
Yeah.
But yeah, the initial concept. But and to me, I'm like, that sounds great. That sounds like a group of people saying, look, we just want to do it on our own. And if you can, that means you've recruited the right kind of people, you've educated them, you've established all your own stuff. I don't have an issue with that. So I'd have to look it up. I don't know this historical incident, so I'll look it up.
I think it's.
But
I'm pretty sure. I want to say Greenwood. Hold on, Green. Yeah, if you look up. Actually, did you watch? Jesus Christ! It came on last year. Watchmen,
no,
like the TV
you're gonna
show.
be mad at me.
Okay, no, it's okay. So watch the Watchmen the TV show, and there was another one even before that. Was it Watchmen? Yeah, it was Watchmen. So in the very beginning, sorry, it was. I think it was Tulsa. Yeah, it was in Tulsa, but
Yeah, so the Greenwood area
yeah,
of Tulsa,
yeah. So
Black Wall Street Massacre.
if you watch the very beginning of Watchmen, the TV show on HBO, it starts with a Tulsa massacre, and so I'm sitting there, and I'm watching it with my girlfriend, which is our anniversary, by the way. It's our 10-year anniversary day. But well, because she said she's gonna work tonight, so I was like, all right, well, you're gonna work, and now she doesn't have to work, so now she's gonna talk to her girlfriends, which is fine. Anyway, so we're watching this, and my girlfriend's sitting there. She's like, "Damn, this is pretty messed up." I was like, this is real, right?" And she was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, this really happened." And she's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, this really happened." And she had to look it up. She's like, "Oh my!" She was horrified. Like she had, and I think most Americans are totally unaware of like this totally secret history here in America of like super racist shit that really stopped the progress of brown people, especially black people. And I think what most people don't seem to understand is like they're like, oh well, Mexicans and well, not even Mexicans are people of Latino descent. They are very close to like where black people are at in America. But if you look at Asians, people are like, well, why don't Asians have the same sort of problems? Well, look in major cities in America. You ever notice how there's a Chinatown or a Japantown or whatever fucking kind of town? You notice how they're still there and they didn't get bombed? Like, we try to do the same thing, and when we try to do the same thing by keeping, our own community together and like keeping our money to ourselves, we got severely punished for it. And that's why you see, other ethnic groups in America, the way that they've come together and they've succeeded, is because of that. Is because they weren't killed for just trying to keep their communities together, and they also did not have their ethnic background stolen. Like our whole history has been stolen. When I say our, I mean people of African descent here in America. They systematically stripped our history from us through the generations. It came close with Native Americans as well. They had to go to these same bullshit schools that stripped them of their heritage. But they still got to keep part of their heritage. I understand that it's unfortunate that it's on certain grounds, but we didn't get those grounds. We just got everything stripped away, and we were left with no history of ourselves, and that's why we're kind of like a lost people, because they replaced our history with this American history, but the American history is history full of people suppressing us.
Well, I mean, and even American history that's taught to us in school is a very specific American history that is, a cartoon version of itself to make sure that
Yeah.
we are patriotic and feel pride in ourselves, and we see where that's getting us. Um,
Ooh,
but
we'll get into that in a minute, but yeah.
I figured that was a good way. But like for me, part of it, right, is that occurred in 1921, the one we were just talking about. So to the people in school right now, like my son just went off to college, right? When you and I were in like high school was so long ago, they don't care about anything that happened in those days, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like ancient history. So events that happened in 1921, they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And so unless it is specifically relevant to them, it doesn't come up, right? So it's not going to be a topic. So like if you were taught about that when you were younger, it was because for someone else they thought that was important to teach you about. Where for me, like I never learned about it because no one's going to teach me that,
Yeah.
right? No one's going to tell me about this incident that would make them and me look bad potentially, right? That's the way people are going to look at it. I wasn't there. I didn't deputize those people and give them weapons, but
Yep.
it's still if we never talk about it and we never say anything. And I think this is where we get to some of the other stuff on general racism, is that if those were white people that did that and provided those weapons and did those things because they were the people who were in power at the time, and then they did those bad things to black people, then both sides can just look at each other and say that all people associated to those groups are that way. And that's where the whole concept gets everybody into trouble too, right? It's like I'm not any of those people, and I wouldn't have done and definitely didn't do any of those things, but I'll be looked at that way. Like maybe I participated in it. It's
Yeah,
like
and well,
no,
that's where I try
yeah,
to tread carefully when I talk about these things. That's why I said like it makes me uncomfortable to talk to even just say what I said before about white people being
yeah.
the majority of people that did that, because I don't want to lump everybody in together, because I understand that not everybody is like that. Um, but it's just like
We weren't all there, right? All
yeah,
white people in the whole country weren't there, and not everyone probably was. But like you said, if you just look at the crowd, you're like, look at that. It looks like mostly it's all white people.
yeah, and I think that's the problem. And I think that most white people have a difficult time really understanding is that this is another thing that was a relevant revelation to me, especially as I started gaining more and more money and wealth or whatever. Is that I would come to places where I'd be the only. It's very frequent, even in California, where I'll be the only black dude where I'm at, and it's just like I'll get like weird looks, like, "Are you supposed to be here?" If I was white, nobody would ever look at me like, "Are you supposed to be here?" Like it wouldn't happen. They would assume that I have whatever I needed to be there,
Yeah,
But
and like, and you didn't. Well, I mean, maybe, but it, I think there was a comment too on it. It was like if it had been a crowd of, and this is I think where we get to where this is how the two topics kind of come together, is if there had been a crowd of black people at and they had gotten to the positions that those people did, more people would have got shot.
oh yeah, I mean 100%.
That
If
was a comment yesterday. I was like, I can't disagree with you with the way things are looking. And that was something my wife said, was like, maybe that's part of why the police like hesitated or slowed down, was like, they are getting beat up right now. So every action they take is under such scrutiny. Maybe they're like, I'm going to wait until this is out of hand. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, it
no,
could be,
because
but I think
people are
it's
still
different. Yeah.
black people are still getting shot for bullshit
Yeah.
in America, right? Even after all the stuff that happened last year, we still see videos of people getting shot, like with goddamn, the guy that got shot last year in the back for going to his car. He got
Mm-hmm.
shot 7 times in the back, and the officer
Yep.
that got they fired him, but no charges against the guy. No charges against the guy who shot a man in the back for going to his car, and he had his hands on him. And it's just like, I don't understand why you couldn't like physically try to restrain him at first.
Yeah.
Like,
There was. there were a dozen other things that
Yeah.
that one was really bad. And then there's, like you said, and there's not there's not only these two stories.
No.
There's a
Yeah.
dozen stories. There's 30 stories. There's it for every every one of those. There's a dozen people who's very closely and very tragically impacted by that, and we all look, and like the crowds are watching now at this point, and we all feel things about it, but there is someone whose life was devastated by that, and
It's not even just one person. It's an entire family. You know what I mean? It's not.
that's what I mean. Like, yeah, like
Yeah.
dozens of people probably who now whole life changed, and that is lost to so many people that it's sad. And that's, I think, to me, the part that's to me the really hard part of these conversations is that it there's a on a certain level, right? There's an ability for people, and I think we talked about it, the numbers thing, right? The 250 or whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as people are outside of that group of close connections, it's really easy for humans, and it's really weird psychological thing that happens where like you have a whole hell of a lot less concern about their life. Like, hey, look, that doesn't necessarily directly impact me daily, like we said about the history stuff. It starts becoming not as big of a deal. We get callous to it. And so it's impossible, for one thing, for us to actually be able to feel as close to that incident as anybody who's actually directly connected to them.
Yeah.
But I think with the interconnected nature of the world today, we're getting a lot closer to it. Like, I've never felt so like devastated by someone in Chicago getting shot. I was like, I have no idea who this person is, but this is terrible. Just watching it, you're like, how the hell is this okay?
Yeah, it's just, and the fact that it keeps happening even after everything that happened, it's just like I don't understand it. I was going to have, like, when all this civil unrest first happened after George Floyd
Yeah.
got murdered on TV. I was gonna have one of my really good friends. I still consider him a good friend, but we haven't been talking lately. And I was gonna have him on the podcast. He's a sheriff here in Alameda County, and I wanted to have him on the podcast. He's actually, I met him through doing jujitsu. I know he knows how to physically restrain somebody, and how to not use the gun first. All right, good dude. And after the George Floyd thing happened, I invited him. I was like, hey, let's. I invited him and another SFPD officer to come on. The SFPD guy was like, no. I was like, that's fine. But my other buddy, he's like, yeah, let's do it. And then, if you listen to this, Mr. X, you know who you are. The reason why I haven't done the podcast with you is not because of you. The reason why I didn't do it is because my problem is not with you. Because I wasn't gonna have you on the podcast to like berate you, or because I love you, man. I hope you know that. I'm sorry that circumstances have been unfortunate over. Like, I miss you, like, seriously. But the problem that I realized over time was the problem is the system. It wasn't with him, and it wasn't with police officers. It's the system that enables them to do what they do, and that allows them to murder people, or to abuse them, and to suppress them, and to have zero consequences. And to me, to have a conversation with him, I don't know how productive it would be, because I'm angry about things that are outside of his control. All right, and I don't want to deny this guy a job. That's his job. Like, that's what he does for a living. But at the same time, I do not support the system that employs him. I also don't support the system that I used to get employed by, which was being a military contractor. I don't support that at all. However, if I got fired tomorrow, guess what I would likely do? Be a contractor again.
Yeah.
Like if worst came to worst, if I can't find another job, I know I can always do that. And so I get it, but the problem, it's the system, and the system is designed to keep people that look like me suppressed and in jail. And
So when we talk of things like this is one of the things I always try to do is, and I don't know if you were planning for this or expecting this, but I'm apologize if not, and we can table it for another day. But like, what are your ideas that you have to fix it, right? Like, what are some changes we can make to try to, yeah. And it might be, maybe it's too loaded of a question,
No,
but
no, no, it's okay.
I have, and I've talked to others too, but I'm more curious, like kind of what things you could see that like at a system level, right, could change and fix these kinds of things.
I
Uh,
I have a few ideas, to be honest with you. I mean, the major one, to me, would be to get rid of the war on drugs. I mean, that has
yep.
done a significant amount of harm to mainly
Yeah.
brown people of color. It
So
Go
did
ahead.
you see, you saw what Oregon passed this
Yes,
year?
and
So
people,
like that,
yeah,
do what Oregon.
and people were like making fun of them for doing that. I'm like, why? Why are you making fun of them for doing that? Like, I don't care what you do as a consenting adult in your own home. I don't. I really don't. If you want to get high all day, or get high, I'm drinking alcohol literally on this podcast right now.
Yep.
This is a drug. I'm doing.
Yes.
I drink almost every day. You know,
Yeah. So
it's
like my brother lives in Oregon, and so when it happened, and he's very, and when I say conservative, I don't mean Republican. I mean he is like morally conservative. No drinking, no smoking, no anything. Right. So to him, that was like just letting the demons out. Like, what are you doing? Why are you letting those people do that? I was like, no one's saying anyone has to. All we're saying is, I don't care if you choose to,
yeah.
so long as that choice isn't endangering anyone else.
Yes, and
So
we have
his
laws for
whole point,
that.
he was like, so you think it's okay if like some mother is sitting at home shooting up heroin on the couch while her kids are sitting on the and watching TV on the no,
No.
because now that's child endangerment.
Yep.
That itself is a crime. That is it. Because of the other thing, you've now caused this thing, which is a crime, right? If you operate a vehicle, not okay. That's still driving under the influence. Still should be punished for it. So, but you would not be punished for the drugs part of it. You would be punished for the endangering other people's lives. And that's where I'm like, now the way they're dealing with it in Oregon too is you're not going to just be like, let me have that stuff, go home. Like you're going to get registered. You're going to go to classes. You're going to be seeking. You're going to be provided like counseling and support to try to help you understand the choices you're making, because maybe people make those choices without understanding.
Yeah.
Maybe get into a rehab program and get past whatever it is, get beyond the demons, their disease that they have, their addiction. Maybe help them rather than just throw them in prison. And so I was astounded. I did not even know that was on Oregon's ballot when it passed, and I was, this was amazing. I was like shocked. I had to go read the whole thing immediately. I was like, wow.
We are in a 100% agreement. I used literally the exact same argument when somebody was like, well, what if they do this? I'm like, we have laws that cover that. Why are we doubling? Why are we having extra laws? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, like seriously. And I think that what most people don't seem to realize, especially people on the right, is that they don't realize that the vast majority of people that are in jail are there for nonviolent crimes. They're there for drug crime. Most people are there for drug crimes, and they should not be in there. And this is what it's going to loop back around to racism, because you might know this, but what is the only way that you could become a slave in America today?
Through the prison system, and then you become enforced labor by going and doing work as a working party for basically as a
It's
through the fuel system. So
it's literally an amendment, and it's the same amendment that freed the slaves is the amendment that says that you can still be a slave if you're incarcerated, and it's the 13th
because you're
Amendment.
no longer considered to be like a citizen. You don't get the rights of anybody else. You don't get yeah. So you lose all that stuff once you're a felon, right? So it's a felony crime, and you go to prison specifically. Yeah. I will ask a little bit for, so it's more of a class distinction sort of thing, but that significantly impacts people who are not white more than white people. But if you were to go look at it, it would look like a very big flip flop of the way most of our society does for who's in prison. But there's still plenty of poor white people in there too, and it's generally the poor who are getting hit with it harder. And I think it's easier, right? And this is part of what comes to that cultural. Remember, I told you, I was like, there's this very big social studies like concept where it's like there always has to be an us versus them, and that's the only way you can motivate people.
Yep.
And that it's a whole lot easier to do it in a way where you're like, well, I can just look at those people and see that they're different. So let's just say that it's them versus us. So the dialogue gets driven that way, where we say that it's it's colored people versus white people or whatever, but then lose the focus of what probably really is the focus, was it's more of a class thing. It's like, keep the poor people poor, and if we can push the group that we want to say, look at them, that they're different than us, into that group as much as possible, then cool, because then you keeps the money concentrated and keeps all the wealth in one group of people's hands.
Yes, but I will add a little bit to this.
Yeah.
And the reason why, like, so obviously, if you look at statistically, who uses more or less drugs, it's actually more people that are white that use drugs. They use drugs more than people that are of color. That's statistically. Just think about going to high school. Wherever you went to high school, anybody here in America, everybody that you knew probably did drugs, right? Was it
something?
Was it all black people? Was it no white people? Like, it was all of us. And if you're in America, if you're gonna say everybody, or at least the vast majority of the people that you went to high school with, did drugs, America is mostly Caucasian. So that right there will tell you that if you look at statistics, that they are doing the most drugs. All right, that's just statistically speaking. It's actually, if you look up the actual stats, it's true. But the problem is where the police choose to actually crack down on these. Yeah, to enforce the laws. They're not enforcing the laws in Beverly Hills. They're not enforcing drug laws in Beverly Hills. They're not. They're enforcing them in, like, Crenshaw or East LA and other places, because they know there's reasons why they do this. The reasons why they do this is because they know that the people that are in poor places, that if they happen to catch them, or even just not even doing a crime, if they put them in jail for any crime, whether or not they did it or not, the likelihood of them having the funds to combat that is very low. If they went to Beverly Hills, it's a twofold problem. First of all, they have the funds to actually get out of doing being prosecuted. And second of all, the other problem is that you might run into somebody that has political power or any sort of power that's in that city. In a poor neighborhood, no likelihood of somebody having any sort of power is very low. And so that's why they do this.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think we're in aggressive agreement here, where it's like, it is about it being the poor neighborhoods, but what we've managed to do is make the poor neighborhoods primarily black neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Right. We've said this area and then forced everybody to live there, and then also gerrymandered the districts so that they don't get represented properly.
Yeah, when you say black neighborhoods, this is the black neighborhood thing. That's all by design. I talked about it, I think, on the previous podcast. What's about? Did I talk about it? Redlining. Mm-hmm. Did I talk to you about that? Yeah, it's like basically we had to live in certain places. Like we literally could not live in the suburbs. We had to live in these certain areas that were near industrial areas that were they had poor construction. They were very cheap, and they were near industrial sites and toxic waste dumps. And so if you look at every ghetto, like if you look up redlining maps in like any major city, you'll see it, and you'll see how there's still ghettos to this day, because people, they move there, and because that's the only place they could move in the past, after slavery. And there are places where most people's wealth in America, the wealth comes from their home. Well, if you're forced to move into a red line district, you're living in a ghetto, all right? And so you can't sell your home. Your home is worth nothing. You have no wealth. That's a basic wealth for most Americans, is owning a home. And in a ghetto, in a red line district, your home doesn't mean shit.
Right.
And so that's what's up?
And you probably don't own it anyways.
Yeah, you probably don't own it. It's probably through a landlord or whatever. Sorry, I own my home. So yeah, well, I'm paying on my home, aggressively paying on it.
Yeah, but on good notes, we actually ours is up. We've only been here 6 months. We've put a lot of work in though, and we're already just over 6 months. We're up 18%. So
nice, very nice.
$7,000.
But just explaining like owning a home to like people in the ghetto, they're just like, what are you even fucking talking about? Like it's usually like Section 8 housing,
There's lots of there are lots of like cultural things that happen that cause people to not understand what their rights are in the United States too. So I was talking to Enrique, right? And he talked about he has family members, plenty of family members, who like freak out that he owns guns because they're like only two people own guns.
Yeah.
Cops own guns and drug lords and drug dealers own guns. He's like, so what are you doing? He's like, no, you can buy a gun. Any of us can have guns. It is completely within your rights for any citizen to have a gun. And they're like, no, it can't be. It's like he's like, what are you talking about?
Dude, hold on. This is so hilarious because they're literally talking to a fucking U.S. Marine about how you can't own guns. Like, this is how insidious this issue is that it's somebody that defends the country with a gun, and they are concerned about him owning a gun.
And he did say it, but partway through the conversation, they're like, "Oh, well, I guess it's okay for you to because you're a Marine." He's like, "No,
yeah, everybody, yeah,
you have one too. Like, it's okay." They just did not. He's like, but that was because that's kind of how they were taught. That's what they were taught their whole life was the only two people who have guns are drug dealers and the cops. And that's why people shoot each other is because drug dealers and cops. It's like you can have one to defend your home so that neither of them can impact that. So it was that's what I'm saying. So I just was trying to highlight like so many things can happen where we just aren't educating enough about even what our basic rights are in the United States too. So
yeah, and that whole rights thing, it like I talked about this actually years ago when President Trump first got elected. Actually, no, I'll rewind even before that because this is so I can criticize somebody that's not President Trump to begin with. Back when President Barack Obama, when he started doing these executive orders, he started doing kind of a lot of them, and then he did the one and he started pushing through the Affordable Health Care Act. Oh, sorry, the one that got me was he was changing gun laws through executive orders.
What?
Yeah, that's
right.
What he was trying to do. But it was it was a token effort, but he still did an executive order to try to curb gun violence in America. And so all my friends on the left were like, "Oh yeah, this is fucking great. This is the greatest president ever." I'm like, "Okay, well, I didn't vote for the guy." And I think he's a decent dude, but I didn't like his policies. So I literally wrote up on Facebook. I was like, "Yeah, if you're happy that our president did an executive order to try to curtail gun laws in America, I guess that's okay. But please be aware that in the future, the next guy, because the pendulum's going to swing, the next guy that comes into office, when he starts wielding the same power that he had, is going to do something you don't like. And just remember what happened today." And it literally happened with this guy, with Trump. I'm not even going to fucking call him president anymore because he's not a president.
Yeah.
You have to call him the president. I fucking don't.
I was surprised you used it twice so far.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm trying to remember like what he did. It's going to make me infuriated again. But it's like he wielded the same. They need to reduce the amount of power that a president has because they kept actually not even since Bush, probably even before that. It probably started with like Reagan, like kind of overreaching a little bit. Then it overreached more.
I've always felt the same, that it's like getting worse, but I had to look. I was like, I'm just gonna look up the numbers real quick. And so no one these days has anywhere near the most. So current president 204, President Obama 276, but that's two terms, right? Not one.
Well,
so,
I think it's actually it's not just the amount of executive orders that they're doing. It's what are they? Yeah.
So you want to know who has the most? Can you get? Who basically built the federal government the way it is right now?
Maybe FDR. I don't know.
FDR.
Yeah.
3,121.
Yeah, but it was different. I mean, let's be honest though. It was a different time back then, where like a lot of shit had to get changed. Yeah. Especially wasn't it the guy that did like the whole? Well, he did the forest shit and then the roads too, right?
And all the dams and everything. So all of that National Park Service, everything was created under FDR. That's he built basically. So and cabinets weren't really formalized, so all of that stuff got formalized under FDR. But he also had 5 terms there, so
yeah. So that's a little skewed, but yeah.
I just had to look at the numbers. So neither of them are doing too many, and so that's something we have to like you made a good point on. You can't just look at the numbers. It has to be what's it about. If suddenly it's like, executive order or federal like curfew of 2,200, like wait a minute.
Yeah.
no one can be out after 10 o'clock at night. Like, excuse me, no.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because there's been so many curfews recently.
Yeah,
But
I'm not creating stuff from nothing.
yeah,
It
yeah.
wouldn't be big of a stretch at this point. From we're already doing them.
But I mean, yeah, I think we do need to start curtailing the power of the president, because I think we just look at what this last person did, where he has appointed they made it a point to brag about how many judges they had put into positions. I'm like, that's not good, especially when they're all on the right. You know, like, and they're all people that are likely in your pocket, and they're people that you assume that are going to vote your way. Thank goodness they did not. They did not all go in his favor, especially during these times. But that's what he was trying to do, was just stack the courts. And I'm like, stacking the courts is not good. Like, you need to have like a more even keeled approach.
My impression over the last little bit has been that Congress does so little that we've created a government um, through law, through like, I can't think of the right term, through basically through the courts, right? So instead of there being laws created that we then implement and enforce, we instead like have court decisions that then affect how we enforce the laws that were already created in new ways, right? So we like take an old law, interpret it a new way from a judge, they pass this court decision, and then that's now the new way that we're dealing with the law, instead of writing a new law. Like, that's the way Congress is supposed to work. So I agree that the president's power needs to be curtailed, but the problem is these are all actions and things that have to happen. So it can't just be like, we're just not going to do this thing. We have to say, okay, well then instead of the president doing this, you need to do this, and like shuffle the pieces around, because they're actions that have to be taken. But Congress doesn't want to do all that extra work. And also, right, I'm going to hit it again. They don't have enough people to do all the work anyways.
Yeah. Well, and
they're ground to more people.
And to be honest with you, I am very worried about this current Congress. People are they're all happy, like, oh, the Democrats got the Senate and the House, blah blah blah. Oh, it's gonna be great. No, it's not. In 2021 has already showed me that it's not gonna be great. Because what was the first thing that Congress did? I'm sorry, I think it was the House. That the House did. They passed. Well, they wanted to remove gender names from the House. I'm like, what are you talking about? So no more man, woman, sister, brother, cousin, whatever. That was their priority, was removing these words from being spoken in the House. In the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a crisis with our current president, that's your priority, is what to call people in the House. Like,
because
what?
This all goes back to it not being a republic, right? We talked about it. Like, it's because all we have to do is pander to the mob and their emotions and what it is that they feel. And as long as we can get them to believe that we're doing the things they want, us to do, then they'll not pay attention to the other things that we're taking care of behind closed doors. So as long as you do these hot topic items and, hey, look at my right hand, but don't pay attention to what I'm doing over here, that's a big part of what it is, because everything is tied directly to a public vote, a public perception of things, and all you have to do is pander to that persona, and it's frustrating for me. Like, there was so much of what I saw going on was relied to that. I was like, this wouldn't have happened if it was a republic and not a democracy, right? If it was not like everybody's saying it's all, oh, but this is the death of the democracy. I'm like, we're not supposed to have a democracy, people.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
this is exactly how democracy is supposed to work.
Yeah,
this is exactly what a democracy is supposed to look like. Everybody just doing whatever the hell they want.
And we're seeing it. It was on full display yesterday. We saw a bunch of people that thought that they were bamboozled into thinking that the presidency, the election, was fraudulent, which it was not. I'll keep saying it. It was not fraudulent. We had multiple investigators go through all the election, only in certain states, because the ones that Trump won, they didn't decide to do anything about those. But the ones that he lost, he decided to go hard and try to contest those. The states went through multiple times. I mean, I think Georgia had like 3 recounts, didn't they?
It was a lot.
Like,
Georgia got worked.
why would you need 3 recounts for like, people know how to fucking count. For real. Like,
Computers know how to count real good.
yeah, and it's just it's insanity to me that these people got bamboozled into thinking that their guy won when he clearly did not. And this is when I started really oh well, I saw it a while ago, but because previously to like the last before like maybe the previous 4 years, I was like, we need to be a democracy, like a true democracy. Everybody needs to vote on everything. Fuck, was I wrong? No, the fuck we don't. People are dumb as shit in America. Like, seriously, we are not. The vast majority of voters they're not intelligent people. And if you want to talk about having like a test to be a voter, you can't do that because then it's a ethnic issue because people aren't educated that are brown people because they don't put resources into our schools. So if you say that, it's going to be a huge issue. So you can't do that. So I understand having this whole the House and the Senate and all that stuff, but it's like, but the people in the House and the Senate are fucking stupid too, because they're from the people. I mean, look at what just happened yesterday. We had an insurrection on the Capitol building because of what was said by people in the Senate and the House and the president. Mm-hmm. After that happened, we had people, we had the president and people in the Senate and people in the House still spewing the same bullshit that literally just cost people their lives, and they didn't give a single solitary fuck.
You're not wrong.
How do we fix that, man? That's my question to you. Sorry, I made statements, didn't ask a question. How do you think we can fix our republic to like get back to the way that the founding fathers really that their dream was, what they wanted America to be? How do we get back to that?
A lot of the stuff was designed in a specific way to make sure that there was no one group that you could control and have everything. And that was the whole purpose, right? So that you have to kind of find ways to balance decision making between all these different groups. And what we've done is broken everything down to get as close as possible, like you said, to everybody getting their voice heard everywhere and in all decisions. And honestly, the only thing that like stays sort of away from it is the Supreme Court. But even then, someone who is basically directly elected is the person who puts those people there, and they're all politically driven selections. Whereas to me, none of the judges should be able to be politically assigned at all. Like, if anybody even sniffs out that you might be a Republican, like you should have never been registered as a specific political party. If you're a judge, you can't, like, do not allow judges. Like, if you become a lawyer and while you're a lawyer is fine, maybe then no. And then you're like, I'm now going to be a judge. Like I am no longer a part of the party. I can't be a part of any political party. And I have to only be a judge, being completely neutral, judging on things, right? Because everybody knows these appointments are political. Then we know that thing is just another extension of the political parties, which we both know like doesn't represent everybody.
Yeah.
So that would be one, right? Remove the ability to be associated at all to political parties for any judges, because then those appointments are based on merit. Like, has this judge done a good job showing like the ability to make good decisions that are based specifically in law and in the Constitution? That'd be one. And then the other would be to like not have a national public election for the president of the United States. It's crazy. Everybody's like, what the hell? No. So it's not ever supposed to be that way.
You want to do like the England thing where you vote for the party?
No. So you choose electors in your state, right? So we each have a certain number of electors, and that does happen anyways, but they're pre-chosen by party. And then they're basically just representatives of the party going to DC or going to get their stuff certified as voting as electors, because we don't get to vote directly for the president. So all our national vote does is inform electors what vote they're supposed to cast, right? But that's a change that was made after basically Jefferson, right? It didn't take long before people started really focusing in on parties. And for even up till then, basically electors were voted on, right? You selected your electors within your state. You chose these people who you feel like represent your state well. Those would probably be very political, right? But you would have to choose 12 of them. But they are not obligated, they weren't at the time at least, by any parties. And then they would have to go, or maybe even within the state, and just choose. Like they would have to review everything about all the candidates and then make their choices, and only their votes count. So that the state would have 12 or 25 or 37 or whatever their state's electors numbers is. Those people get locked in a room like a jury, and you come out with a decision on where your numbers go.
So
they don't have to go one way.
Let me add something into this. What he's talking about might seem sort of ridiculous to some people that are listening to this. I had to think about it kind of hard. All of you that are listening to this, that if you voted in the last election, how much research did you do for everything that you voted on? To be honest, I actually did a pretty decent amount. I think it took me maybe 2.5 hours to do my whole thing, and even that probably not enough, But I went through everything. I looked it up on Google. I went through my booklet. I made sure what I was voting on, because some of the stuff that you're voting on, it's very coded language, and sometimes yes means no, sometimes no means yes, and you might not know. What's up?
Especially in California. California does that a lot.
Yeah,
a lot of it.
Like with Prop 8, I think it was years back. To vote for gay marriage, you had to vote no, which was okay. I read it, I voted no, but that's why I didn't pass, because you had to vote no for it. But anyway, I think that a lot of the average American that works, full time, they don't have the time or resources to really research what they're really voting on. And so I think there is a valid argument to be made that, hey, perhaps we should have electors to do this for us, because we just don't have the time or the education or whatever to do this. But I also think it becomes a slippery slope to where the electors might not vote in your best interest. But at the same time, the system we have now, it's not really in our best interest.
Yeah. So the fact that the electors could, right, and I think eventually there's no way to prevent it without saying you're not allowed to be a registered member of any political party or something. But even then, if hey, I've been a college professor for 10 years, and someone mentions hey, on the next presidential election, I'm going to nominate you to be one of the electors for the state, right? Oh, that sounds cool, but I'm a registered Democrat, say, for this scenario. It's but you can't be a registered Democrat, so you have to not vote as you have to deregister as a registered member of a political party, and then you could become one, but you still were one, and you still have all those ties, and everybody still knows you.
Yeah.
So technically, you've met the requirement, but it would also mean still that you're not obligated. So there is at least enough of a gray area for me to feel like people could potentially not be tied to, feeling like they're obligated to vote based on their party, just because that was what they think got them selected for that position. And that I think is a big part of it, is where we've gone wrong, is we've gone so hard in on parties. You have to vote along with your party. That's to me a big part of it.
Yeah, I think that is an issue. What do you know about ranked choice voting? Do you know about that at all?
Yeah, so it's better than what we're doing, because first past the post is generally so this is why democracy as a basic level doesn't work also, right? It's the same concepts. So first past the post means whoever has the total amount to get their wins, right? So if we're making a decision and there are 100 of us and 51 people want it one way and 49 people want it a different way, it goes the way the 51 people chose, because that's a majority. That's still 49 people who did not want that decision to go through. So you have a whole lot of this group, about half pretty much, who are pissed off at whatever this decision was. And that's generally not a good thing for society. So ranked choice voting would be say I had 5 choices for president, and depending on how the state works, you either have to rank everyone, because some of them do them that way. And I'd say president, but it could be governor, your state legislature. You have to mark every single person and with a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever, who your first choice, last choice is, basically all the way down. And then it's basically an instant runoff is kind of what they call, where the 2 who get the most points, basically. It's not necessarily you just had to vote for one, but it might have been the person who you put second gets it because everybody chose second for that person, but like nobody put the same first person as first. So
Yeah.
there was enough point differences that generally everybody was kind of like, okay, I could accept that person, but that's not my first choice. So you end up with two things: one, more opportunity for people to have a better understanding of what it is they're voting for. Everybody gets a little bit more of a vote, to me, anyways, because you're getting to choose everybody. And then you have a whole lot less people who are completely against whatever it was that was chosen, because you kind of had to make a choice of what would you choose next, like if you had to, and you're making that choice. So then when you get your second choice instead of your first choice, we don't usually feel as bad. Now, if you only have two choices,
Yeah. So yeah, thanks I mean, I knew what it was. I listened to a whole podcast on it.
yeah.
Um, Obviously, I didn't go to college for it.
Is that a succinct version of it that I like
Yeah. No,
break
no,
it down short?
you did a great job breaking it down. I think if we went down the Democratic route, I think that would be a more acceptable way to go. But I like your idea as well. It's just I think that we need to find a better system in America. I don't understand how we've had our current system for so long. I've talked about it on multiple podcasts now with both of us. We had this current system for like hundreds of years, and we haven't changed it like really at all. And like we're just expecting to ride this shit into the fucking rocks. Like really?
Yeah. The current way we're riding it's been around for 107, right? 1913, I told you, was when we made basically the structure we have now and haven't changed it much. And I don't think it was, I think the changes we made were bad anyways. We'd be better off if we were running on the same system from 300 years ago.
So wait, hold
But
on. Explain what changes do we make in 1913?
so 1913 was the locking down of the House, right? Reducing numbers, like saying no more growth. It was this is when the big change happened for the Senate too. So Senate seats used to not be directly elected for the states either. It was up to the state, the same way they choose their own state legislatures.
Mhm.
The state could decide how they chose their senators on their own. Um, and so most states, so there were like two or three at the time when it changed, that didn't do it this way, but almost every one of the states had their state legislature run an internal thing. Basically, nominees came from the state, and then the state legislature themselves chose who the senators were. So it wasn't a direct popular vote from the people to choose the senators. And in 1913, again, was the law passed to be like, nope, all states are required to do direct election for senators.
So
So
I have a question that probably some people might be thinking listening to this podcast. So if we had like appointed electors for anything for that matter, what happens if the elected the person that was appointed is doing stuff that the people do not agree with? What is the people's recourse?
so I mean, in most cases, they're either a state legislator, so you should replace them. I mean, if it's either the
Well, hold on, just real quick though. If they're appointed though, how would the people replace them?
so like in the senator example, they are elected within their state, right? So you have a
Okay.
state legislature as well. So those state legislators are the ones choosing it, and if you feel like they're not choosing the way we should, which is the way we're choosing them anyways, then replace them, vote for somebody else. Um, and in most cases, the states have methods for removing those people from office too. I mean, shit, California is really good at removing their governor. Uh,
Yeah. It might happen
it's
again.
like third time in like 15 years I've heard we're going to impeach the governor. I was like, that's probably going to happen because
Yeah.
California's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got the governor. Yeah. Actually, Schwarzenegger did a pretty good job. People give him a lot of crap, but he did a decent job. I think he was way more squarely in the middle than most people were assuming. It's probably because of his wife, but it is what it is. It honestly, if that dude wasn't a foreign birth, he'd
Yeah.
probably run for president, and he would probably win,
And like, I
and
agree with you.
and I'd
And
be okay with
I
it,
almost, what's that?
and I would be okay with it if he
Yeah.
won.
And I think most people would like, if I brought the topic of like, should we propose a constitutional amendment to allow it? That thing would gain some traction. People would talk about it
Yeah,
for sure. Whether it would pass or not, and whether it's the right thing to do, if you think long term, do we really want a foreign born national to potentially be able to become president 30 years from now when they're not Arnold Schwarzenegger? Don't know.
yeah, yeah. There could be
So
unforeseen consequences.
those consequences long term, we got to think that way. So that's why they did it. Because there's going to be plenty of really charismatic foreigners that we would love to have do it, but you're going to get someone later who's managed to get their way through the system and should not have. So
You mean like Donald Trump? Even if he's not foreign, but nothing protected us from that guy.
yeah, I mean, so like I think a big part of his platform for running, like, and some of the people who voted for him were running with this concept that he sold of he's not a career politician. He's not someone who is already on the inside right. He's going to go drain the swamp. A lot of people voted for him based on that concept. Like, hey, go in there and shake things up and be someone who's not a politician. And I think that if you know someone that runs in those circles and is already so closely tied to all those politicians, it's really not that drastically different.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like when he got elected, I didn't vote. Actually, the last election, I did not vote it. Not the last one, the one before that. You know what I mean? 2016. I didn't vote at all because I wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. And Gary Johnson he wasn't really viable. But I should have done the right thing and just wrote him in. I should have wrote in Gary Johnson because I wrote in Andrew Yang this year or last year. I should have done it for Gary Johnson.
Was Johnson not on the ballot in California?
No, he wasn't. I mean, you can write in anybody. I could write in me. So
yeah, but did he not make it to the ballot for?
I think he made it, but I was just like, he's not going to be the president. I wanted him to be the president, but they weren't giving him any airtime, and I was they disenfranchised me.
They never give that to any of the third party candidates, but that's a whole topic and stuff.
But this year, I was just like, you know what? I got a guy who I really believed in, or last year, and I'm going to write him in, even though he's not on the ballot. I was fine with that. I'm not gonna let my vote not count again, even if it's somebody that's not going to be the president. And I voted on all the other shit too. But
so I was going to bring this up too when we were talking about, are there certain things that I shouldn't be voting for at a state level, right, or even at a federal level, especially? And so I do this on almost every ballot. I don't vote on certain topics. So when I see something on a ballot, right, and I'm like, that's not a decision for the average citizen to make. You need to deal with this at the legislature, like someone whose job it is to make state level decisions. So like I'll vote for a county tax to support the county schools. But if you're voting for like a statewide new tax to take care of, this statewide system, I'm like, just decide that at the legislature. Why are you passing that on to me? Like, I don't know enough about this or what impact it's going to have statewide. That's why you send people from each district to the capital of the state to talk about these things, because they're going to each represent their regions and you can come to a decision. I can't make this decision for that county over there. And I might vote differently if I knew what impact it would have on them.
Yeah,
that's why they're those people.
I recognize that this year for like the first time ever was like I was literally voting for the district butts up against me, but it's an unincorporated part of California to live in the hills. And I'm like, why am I voting on like whether or not to keep their taxes at a certain rate? Or I'm like, I don't live there. Yeah. Like, why would I vote on this? So yeah, it seems so. Yeah, I got you on that point. Like, I don't get why I'm voting on things that don't affect me at all, and that other people should be voting on, whether or not it's electors or those specific people. I don't know if it's a problem with in the specific example that I'm talking about. I don't know if it's a problem with districting, because maybe their district is lumped in with mine. If so, that needs to change, because my problems are not their problems. Like, they're not. I mean, they're close, yeah, but I mean, they're not my problems.
Yeah, I mean, if the decision was for a bridge, across that affects both of your communities, then sure.
Yeah.
But like, it's not one of those, because like in Vancouver, Washington, where I technically vote still, like the bridge that crosses over into Portland across the Columbia River is a huge topic every year, and it's important to everyone in the I-5 corridor. Like, it should be a Washington, Oregon, California vote to fix this, because it impacts truckers going from everywhere along the West Coast. Because when you get to Portland, if you have to go beyond Portland, you need to go around, because you cannot get across that bridge ever, because it is so slow.
Yeah, I actually went through that once on 5.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so what? Let me tell you a crazy story. A friend of mine was getting married. He was in the Marine Corps, and I went from, I think it was Oceanside or Irvine, California, to just south of Tacoma, Washington, and I did it in 13 hours. I was driving like 100 miles per hour, like pretty much the whole time. I got pulled over once when I got to to Washington because my friend was like, hey, once you get to like past Portland, you get into Washington, like slow down because they'll give you a ticket. And sure enough, maybe like 25 miles in, I was driving and there was like a guy in a truck, like a brown truck with like a what do you call them, the hunter rack in the back of the, like he pulled me over, like the lights came on. I was like, what? Are you serious? What is this?
Just put something on.
Yeah. So I got pulled over and I got a ticket. It's funny, the ticket never went on my record. I guess I just paid their, police department. But whatever.
The usually that happens in Southern Oregon too when you're doing the winding through the mountains. Like they'll usually pull you over there too if you're going too fast. That's danger. That those curves are pretty bad. But
Oh yeah, I actually on the way because I did that drive, that 13-hour drive, and I went to the wedding and I drove back. I think that night, which that was stupid because I got to the winding part you're talking about and I was like, yeah, I can't do this. I pulled over and I just went to sleep.
that part ever is dangerous. And we were trying to go through there. We were even just going the speed limit, but it got so foggy. We got pulled over, and the cop was just like, "Hey, look, it is really really bad up here. Don't go the speed limit. You need to go about 10 under. It is crazy bad fog right now." I was like, "Okay, thanks, appreciate it." Like it was literally just like, "Hey, be careful."
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we got off topic a little. But.
No. It's all good. So anyway, let's. What were we talking about? Do you remember what you were talking about? Was there any points you need to add into that?
I think so.
Go ahead.
You asked like what else could we do to fix it, and then so you asked about electors, and I mentioned with it being appointed, but as already state legislature. So even in the current model, those certifications that you saw Congress doing, they're reviewing a piece of paper, right? That paper is certified by the state legislature, and that's where those electors go and cast their ballots.
Yeah.
So that should still happen. And then all you would have to do is still hold those same state legislatures accountable. Is if we were listening to that certification or we're paying attention enough where those really actively involved citizens like you and I are, and I'm looking at the list and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Why would he vote for that person as an elector, right? Someone who's not supposed to be politically affiliated, and everyone else came to this decision and this one person went sideways, and that he basically voted for a political party he used to be associated with. And Congress in the state legislature didn't catch that and didn't, toss him out or whatever. You can still hold the legislature accountable, your state legislature. That's the only recourse you have in that case, and it's probably not going to be fast enough. Probably gonna be too late. Like it already went, and I mean that's it. Now, could we create laws that like make it a punishment for not being honest in those things, and like where it's what's the like RICO type stuff? Like, hey, were you coerced? Was there something else going on? Was someone making you do it a certain way? You start getting investigating, and then maybe hold them accountable for voting a certain way or being coerced to do so. But that's really hard to ever prove.
Yeah.
That's the problem with
well, I think when it comes to people that we elect, I think that there should be harsher punishments for a lot of these sorts of things. I mean, like we
power.
Yeah, I mean, there's serious abuses of power, and these people are they're getting away with it on a daily basis. I mean, if going back to like what happened yesterday, I expect thousands of people to be arrested that did the actual act, and I expect at least 140 something people in Congress to step down. I really do, and I
really have expectations.
No, I expect there at least to be some pressure because these people have incited violence, like literally against themselves, like morons.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that those people, even after the violence happened, that they still were pushing for, like, I don't understand their logic on this. Like
so they got what they wanted, but I think it didn't have as big of an impact as they expected, right? So their goal was to stop the certification, right? Make it so that the electoral college certification process that was happening at that time didn't happen, right? So they stopped it, and they did. They interrupted it. They had to stop everything. Everybody had to go away and move away. But it was like as soon as they managed to clear it, they went back in and they finished. They're like, "We're gonna finish this, done." So,
I mean,
that was the goal.
Yeah, but there needs to be. It just
Is that a reasonable goal?
no, yeah, it's well, they were dumb, obviously, but the way that all of it happened is it was just so incredible to me that that people weren't like a police officer died today. I don't know if you read that. He got hit in the head but with a fire extinguisher by one of the terrorists. And these are the same people that I would assume were the like Blue Lives Matter thing, and it's like, well, you killed a cop, so I mean,
Do it.
yeah, and it's just, and there's very little like if somebody black would have done that, that it'd have been way more bigger of a deal. And like you said before, if there was like a mob of brown people storming the Capitol building, there would have been way more shots fired. They would have actually done their goddamn jobs and protected the people that were inside that building that were doing the job of the people that we elected them to do. And
I think we both would agree before you go too much further, though, that not shooting them would be the goal. Stopping them
yes,
from hurting people without doing that would be the first objective, because they're also supposed to be protecting those citizens because they are citizens of this country. But like when you turn into an angry mob, you stop being individuals.
yes,
When you endanger the lives of others, I'm going to do my best to not endanger your life to keep you from doing that. But if I have to, I will protect other people. But
yeah. Thank you for saying that.
there
'Cause
was nothing.
I
There
don't.
was nothing.
I don't want it to seem like I wanted a whole bunch of white folks to die. I did. I don't want that to happen. What should have happened is that it should have been stopped with a obvious show of force that would have
Yeah.
deterred anybody from getting onto those steps into the building and destroying property, threatening lives, planting pipe bombs, killing people. All those things that happened could have been avoided if they would have shown the same amount of force that was used when you had protests for Black Lives Matter earlier
Important.
last year. What's up?
Like in Portland.
Well, Portland, that was actually a failure because right they took over the city. Or they took over like the Chaz thing.
There was definitely no. That was Seattle. That was Seattle.
Oh, sorry, yeah, yeah.
Portland was very aggressive, like probably too much, and it's a fine line to walk.
Oh,
Like
that was over
where
the secret police. Yeah, I gotcha.
then it became now we're just gonna fight back because you guys are ridiculous,
Yeah,
and I totally understand those people too. Like I'm very much a freedom. Like don't mess with us. Like if we're here protesting, as long as we're not hurting anybody, leave us alone. But I think there's a line between that. Like, there's no reason there's not a fence. Like, hey, don't come past here because this is where we think, this is where we're trying to protect these people. Just be here, protest, make your point, but peacefully, right? That's in the Constitution. You are absolutely have within your rights to peacefully assemble and have a protest. When it's not peaceful, it stops being peacefully assembled, and you no longer have the right to do what it is you're doing. So,
and
um,
I totally agree with that. Even when it comes to like the Black Lives Matter protests that happened last year, when it started getting into like rioting and looting, then yeah, you need to stop that. Obviously, you have to stop that. But at the same time, those Black Lives Matter protests that were there was not a single Black Lives Matter protest that where their goal was to stop government work and where they took over a building and just like that didn't happen because they had deterrence there to stop that even if it was going to happen. I mean, we literally had people that were in DC that got removed from the premises by rubber bullets and gas and forcibly removed through violence from the police, so Donald Trump, not the president anymore, could get a photo op with a Bible in front of a church.
during the coronavirus, right?
Yeah, during the coronavirus, and
Like,
go ahead.
wasn't it right when he got sick too?
Yeah, because he is what he is. But yesterday we had people that they didn't use any of those sorts of deterrents to stop them from storming the Capitol building and putting lives in danger, and there was lives lost. There was no sorts of deterrents like that. None.
Yeah, so I mean, like the only two options, right? There's only two ways that happened, right? One is the total comedy of errors, like everybody screwed up, and like, oh my gosh, no one like could keep track of what was going on, and every, what's it like, series of unfortunate events, or like
Yeah.
basically all those ones where you're like, if every single thing in the chain just went wrong, like all the way down the line. So that's either everyone's incompetent and made total huge amounts of mistakes, which we've seen them not do before, so seems unlikely, or people were like, accomplices on it, right? Like you said.
Yeah, which is my. I mean, I don't like conspiracy theories, but what I saw is what I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw them taking selfies with terrorists and removing gates and not using any sort of force against them to stop them from getting access to a building where they should not have gained access to.
Yeah.
And that to me is just it's baffling.
Do you think so? Those people should be charged, like for letting them in with
Yes.
some kind of a crime, not
Yeah.
just lose their jobs, but should be charged with accomplice to whatever deaths happened as well.
Yes, I think I think there needs to be a heavy-handed response to what happened, and it's not just the individual police officers that were there, because obviously they should be charged as well. But I think that honestly, this is another tinfoil hat thing coming on. It wasn't just the police officers that were there. It was the lack of the National Guard being mobilized in any sort of reasonable amount of time, or any sort of help really getting there. Like I'm watching this happen on TV. I'm like, where is the enhanced security? Why aren't there more people there? Like there's a guy that served in the Marine Corps. To me, this seems like totally ridiculous. Like you know, we talked about it on the a couple podcasts ago where talking about splitting up Congress. They
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't all be in this. I totally agree. I agreed on the last one. These people should not be in the same place. What?
One building, they're both the Senate and the House is there. You're like,
Yeah, it comes back to redundancy. You
yeah,
know, I'm a stickler for redundancy. I'm like, so when you said it should be in like three, I think you said it was three separate cities. Well, five, even better. Five separate cities. You
yeah,
can do a goddamn Zoom call in those five separate cities. Stop all coming to DC. Stop wasting goddamn fuel on jet lines, and all this other nonsense. You're just wasting the people's money. You're wasting people's money.
yeah. So the Senate should still be in the national capital, the main national capital where the president is, and then one of the regional houses could be there if you wanted to. I would say not, right? Try to separate it even more, like you said, but have five separate regional capital buildings for the representatives to be in for the House.
Yeah.
That's just a theory.
Well, and what that's the way I think that's a really good way to do it. And I think that what I'm worried about, this is like my fears, is that Russia and China and North Korea, they're all looking at us like we're fucking morons. Like,
Yeah.
could you imagine if there was a bunch of like Russian spies or they could have infiltrated, um, MAGA easily. They really could have,
Yeah,
and went in there and just with firearms and just started killing a bunch of people. I mean,
and I mean, so infiltrating a group of people who are, peaceful protesters seems to be the trending second story that comes along with every single one of these riots, which is like we were there doing a peaceful protest for our topic that we wanted to cover, and then some other group of people showed up. We don't know who the hell they were, and they started the riot. Right? It had nothing to do with us.
that was
It's
not
been
the
like every single topic.
yes, but in this specific instance, that was not the case. Like I saw,
Right.
yeah, they were all basically uniformed up with MAGA shit. I mean, come on. I saw one of the most disgusting things is like somebody that had like a sweater on that said Auschwitz camp something, and I was just like, so really, we're doing the whole Nazi thing, and I watched a person on CNN do the whole Nazi fucking salute and all that shit. I'm just like, dude, are you for real?
Have you? So, yeah, I don't know. I was going to go back to the numbers in Congress thing because have you seen the idea that it's so many people and we need to spread them apart was part of the logic of it, but also the redundancy is great. So the Chinese National Congress is almost 3,000 people. So we're talking about 6,000 would be if we did our numbers, which I can't imagine that they're doing anything like the proportions we're talking about
Yeah,
because theirs would be so high.
yeah,
But it's also all in one room. It's like this huge stadium seating. You see, like who's talking? How do you have a conversation?
yeah. It's because we have like this super old like 2 century ago thinking for like these ideas when we live in the 21st century. Like we have technology, let's use it. Stop being stupid. Like we don't use fucking rotary phones anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, come on. And rotary phones are some of these people were born in times where there was like no TVs, you
yeah,
know, and this is why we're stuck with these dumbass old ideas. And yeah, I get it. You have experience, but there comes a time with a lot of people, not everybody, with a lot of people when they get old, when they're stuck in their old stupid ideas, all right, and they cannot move forward for whatever reason. And I met plenty of old people that are they still have their wits about them. They still caught up. They're still on the ball with technology and the way the world works. But when I see a lot of members of Congress, they are not like that. They don't understand the way the internet works. They don't understand that there's cars that run on batteries. They don't understand like just basic shit that most people in America really understand. And they are supposed to be the advocates for the people, but they don't understand the tools and technologies and culture, anything that the people run their lives by. And it's a
Yeah.
disgrace.
So, so we just started watching Schitt's Creek. Have you ever watched it?
No, my girlfriend loves that show. I haven't watched
We
it.
just started watching it. So like to me, they're all the roses, right? They're like this super well-to-do, completely way up here family, like everything so wealthy that they have completely disconnected from basic everyday person's reality. And then if you take, which the show is basically, take them and just like drop them, lose everything, and they have to exist in this small town kind of concept.
Mhm.
They don't know how to do anything on their own, right? So they have to learn all this stuff, and it's funny kind of watching them learn basic stuff. Yeah, so they're not going to understand these things because they don't have to do those things themselves. They have other people to take care of that stuff for them. But I will say, like, a lot of work in the Capitol is still done by courier. Like, here's a letter, deliver this to that person over there. So you have runners. Like, a lot of people get their first like jobs trying to move towards being important in political circles and stuff, being couriers and being assistants and aides to people in Congress,
It's
because
so
they need a
stupid.
bunch of people to run messages around and stuff. It's crazy.
It's like having a carrier pigeon. Like serious. We
I
have
wouldn't be surprised if
email.
there isn't someone being paid to like maintain the pigeons.
Yeah, it just is so it's so incredibly stupid to me, that we are living in a time when we have all like AI is on the cusp of
Yeah.
um like self actualization. The singularity is close in hand, and we have people running letters back and forth like it was the ninth grade. Like seriously.
Passing notes without me.
Yeah. Like, why are we doing this?
There's a satellite communications constellation called Skynet, right?
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised at
There's
all.
already one there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, I don't get it. The other day I was watching a video of Boston Dynamics of their robots dancing. I shared it.
The dog.
No, no, they have like the actual like the walking robot and the dogs too.
Mm.
But they were like they had this whole dance routine going on. I'm like, okay, so now they can dance too. They're gonna dance on our bones.
Yeah.
Like,
Eventually.
yeah, I mean they're doing good dance moves, but it's just like we have that, and then we have somebody else that needs a courier to pass along a letter to another person in a different building.
So I
That's
mean, it's a security is the reason they do it, right? That's what they say when I read about it. It's because like I trust you. I know that I can trust you. You have the clearances. You have all these investigations done. Whatever. I can put this document in a folder that I need safely taken to that person who also has the clearance and the need to know and the whatever. So I know that it's getting safe delivered. Like a closed loop SIPRNet type network does the same thing. Why
yeah,
can't you guys don't have this? Like, how is
exactly.
this not a thing? And I know that they don't, because Clinton can just email anything on her own personal servers. Like, because she didn't have a provided one from work, is what she said. I was like, how do you not have a provided email from work?
Yeah.
I don't.
So for y'all that are confused, he said a term. If you're a civilian, if he said the SIPRNet, which it's the secured internet for for the military and the basically most of the government. Basically, it's a whole separate internet from what we use. Okay, we have the military has the NIPRNet too. It's a non-secure internet, which is like more widely used. And there's also the TIPRNet. You ever use that?
It's different now, but yeah,
Okay, so they changed the name. Don't say the name; it's
yeah,
fine. But basically, there's a whole different echelon of that as well, where it's like even more secretive. But I can talk about it because it's you can look it up on the internet. It's out there. But yeah, there's
yep.
separate internets out there to do the things that they're using human beings to do, and it's stupid.
Well, and we're not even talking about this national network of stuff that would be required later. We're literally talking about within one building, right?
Yeah,
or down the road maybe to the White House. Like you literally maybe need to go 5 miles down the road. You could literally just run some cables.
Yeah, and you can literally just print to their printer. Like, come on.
You know. It's a little crazy. So
Yeah.
But it's that level of stuff that I think impacts all the rest of these things. We can't make basic decisions like that. How are we going to make huge sweeping changes like let's change the number of representatives we have, or let's not have the citizens of the United States vote for the president? People in this country would lose their mind if suddenly we didn't vote on the president.
But we really don't. I mean, we don't
We
anyway.
play a show.
Yeah.
We play the show, and everybody plays the game, and they pretend like they do, but they don't. If we just told them, never mind, we're not going to play that game this year, like people would freak out.
I think they would, because they don't understand the way the electoral college works for most people, and that's why, when I said it a few years back, it's just like it doesn't matter if I vote, especially in California. It really doesn't matter how I vote. 100% doesn't matter. If you live in Florida, or if you live in a swing state, your vote probably matters more than you think it does. But if you're in a deep red or a deep fucking blue state, like your vote does for the president does not matter. You're more well served on voting on local matters. That matters. But as far as the presidency goes, it doesn't matter. I could have voted for Trump or or Biden. It wouldn't have mattered. There's the vast majority of my state was going to vote for Biden, and I already knew that. I have no love for Biden at all. I have hope that he will help heal this country, but I had serious reservations on voting for a guy that helped write the crime bill, and had all these other various issues throughout his political career. And when I say that to some people that are Democrats, they get mad at me. I'm like, if you look at the crime bill, look up for that one bill alone, it puts so many people that were brown in prison and people that were poor in prison than probably any other bill that I can remember, really. I mean, yeah, Nixon talked about the war on drugs. Reagan started the war on drugs. And then, Clinton wrote the Clinton administration wrote the bill for the crime bill. And that's what really started really doing the whole mass that accelerated mass incarceration in America. And you can look it up if you want. So
What I think we need to start doing too, and this is just a society, obviously me and you aren't going to fix this problem, but is like
you will eventually. You're going to run for president. It's all good. I'll support you.
but we have to refer to things by Congress too, right? So we always talk about when things happened based on the presidential administration that was in place at the time, even if the thing was something that started in the Senate or in the House as a bill, was passed and was maybe advocated for by a president or something. But like, which Congress did that? I wouldn't have any idea. I'd have to go look up which Congress was in session at the same time as this president, because it's easier for us to remember that, I think. But that's because that's how we talk about it. That's because that's how everybody else is going to talk about it. So if I said, it was done during the 112th Congress, then we'd be like, when the hell was that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem is, especially when it comes to the bill that I was talking about, is because Bill Clinton, he talked a lot about the crime bill, so he had like a lot of airtime about supporting the crime bill, and so did Hillary Clinton. So yeah, but generally speaking, yeah, you're totally right. It's just for me that specific one they talked about. But yeah, usually like most bills, yeah, it depends on whoever's in Congress, and then also whether or not the president vetoes it or not. Which, I mean, they don't veto very much, but
And I wonder like who wrote it. That's a big part of when I always look back. So because it usually has to start in a committee.
Yeah.
And so it has to get there somehow. Someone else has to write it. The president, like Bill Clinton, did not sit at his desk and write this thing. You know what I mean? So like someone else wrote it.
Yeah.
He might have advocated for it. He might have said, "Hey, here's the things I want to see in it." Someone had to actually do the work, and I want to start, this movement and this conversation, and I have to get better at it because I don't know these things either. Of like, and I try to go read them, but then, for one, like we talked about last time, it's like sometimes it's so hard to read this stuff that is so much there that I have to read the summaries and things like that and see who did it and go, okay. But we don't ever know that, like who's actually doing the work. And then even then, that's still a wave tops thing. If it says these 5 Congress people were the sponsors for this bill inside this committee, it was still written by their 147 staffers. It wasn't
Yeah.
really them, like they then decided on it, made adjustments to it. But like the meat and potatoes has to be done by a team of people um, who are probably not getting paid very much either.
Yeah, and I don't like the way the whole process even works because they put in these legalese terms, which I understand. Like you need to have that, but they need to have like I think you said it. They need to
Yeah,
have like two
two.
different versions. Yeah, it's like you need to have something that's human readable, and then another version that is legally safe. And the
Yeah,
fact that they're not using the fact that they're just having these 1,000-page long documents and just spitting it out there and then be like, hey, read this in 12 hours or a day or 3 days. It's like that's unreasonable amounts of time. Like
and we can't honestly expect our Congress people to be able to keep up with that. It's unfair. It's not realistic.
yeah, but it is
So
unrealistic.
to I don't know, to try to bring us back to what I think you wanted to talk about for the major topic too was do you remember how long boot camp is
13
for
weeks?
us? 13 weeks.
Yeah.
How long is the average like police academy?
Oh, it's not that.
No,
Yeah.
it's like 2 weeks, right? Usually maybe a month, most of them. And then those people, when they graduate, where do they go on the force? What's their job that they go do? They're
Well,
usually like straight to the streets.
no. So I know this from personal experience. Well, not personal experience. I'm sorry. My friends' experiences. They usually they go to the quote unquote streets where they have an FTO, which is like a field training officer.
Yeah,
So it's kind of
paired
like
up with
OJT.
someone, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. How long do they do that for?
Not more than a couple months, if even that. It's usually like a couple weeks.
So that would be my big thing. I think would be one of the things that could help. I think with specifically the systematic problem that we have, which I think is there's no standard for one. Like we that might be to your area. It might be different in a different city. It might be 1 week. Like
Yeah.
that you go with a training officer. Um, so I think a little bit more standardization, a little bit more scrutiny on the training to get them prepared before their first time going out because um,
Well, hold on,
we spent
real quick.
even
I didn't give my entire list, but let me to talk about what you were just talking about
yeah.
training. Is that when I hear police officers and police advocates talk about, oh, we don't have enough training or we don't have enough funding. No, get the fuck out of here. You have enough funding, 100%. You're just putting in the wrong places. If you would stop buying tanks
Yeah.
and grenade launchers and all these other sniper rifles and all this other shit, you would have plenty of funding to properly train your police officers. But you decided to take the money. I forget the name of the grants, but there's grants to militarize the police, and the fact that they are using these grants to just buy military equipment and use it just for that instead of actually properly training their police officers. That's a huge problem because this is coming from somebody that up until last year did jujitsu a lot. All right, I did jujitsu probably at least every week. I would do jujitsu at least probably 10 to 16 hours a week. All right, and I trained with plenty of police officers, and the vast majority of them don't know how to fucking defend themselves on a basic level. The vast majority, and the ones that I'll give some credit to the ones that stick around. There's three in particular that I'm thinking of, probably four. But there's been so many other police officers that I have rolled with, which is basically sparring, and then I've seen them come there, and within a week or so they're done, and they don't ever come back, and I'm just like, you're a liability. Like I know you don't know how to fight at all. You don't know how to physically restrain somebody at all, and you got embarrassed at an academy by getting manhandled, and instead of actually learning how to physically restrain somebody, you decided that the gun is the better route to go, and it's not. And for those of you that are listening to this that have trained with me, thank you for training with me and sticking with training with me. All you guys know that I'm not trying to hurt you at all. If you're a police officer or in law enforcement at all, you guys especially, except for what Mr. X. Mr. X knows that I'm gonna go hard for him. I'm not gonna try to hurt him because we both know how to tap, but we have a special relationship. The rest of you guys, um, I know that you you guys have a career, and I'm not trying to disable you. I'm not coming at you guys with anger or anything like that. I just want you guys to be able to better serve your communities. And there's so many people out there that are just they don't take that into account. They're not taking the hard route, you know.
Well, I mean, and it's a disconnect from your real purpose, right? Because the goal is to be your purpose is to
Protect
keep
and
these people
serve.
safe, right? And protect and serve. And I think that maybe that's lost. We spend a lot of time in the Marine Corps, right, talking about the right mental headspace to make sure you understand what your objectives are, what your rules are, and how you can and can't engage. And knowing that it's inherently a dangerous situation, something can go wrong and someone can get killed. And that can happen. We all understand that and can accept that in a police situation that stuff could happen.
Yeah.
But so many times we look at these situations, you go, there's really no reason that should have went that way. Um, I don't want cops getting shot every day either,
Neither
like
do I.
because they are hesitating and not engaging when they should have. But I think what we need to do is put them through enough like real world training up until the point where they feel comfortable being able to decipher the difference between the two. And I think that's what's missing is enough time, maybe like you said, a proper focus on training. I don't think huge SWAT teams need to be a thing that we're doing. There should be.
There shouldn't even be. This is
I
the
feel like your city is in a position where I need these things to be available to me. You need to talk to your governor and have National Guard resources
yes.
available nearby. People
Yeah.
whose job it is in that really rare instance, and those are the people who get called when that kind of stuff happens. A SWAT team, right? Like dudes with trucks and a couple of bigger guns, sure, but like in most cases, you don't need many of those. You don't need a whole lot of that.
Yeah, it's the vast majority of cases. The SWAT teams mainly get deployed to to serve warrants, and they're like for like non-violent crimes. It's the dumbest shit ever. And I brought this up before, but it's like if you need it, you can easily mobilize. There's military installations in every goddamn state,
Yeah.
and not even states in territories. So and it's easy to deploy them because there's always somebody on duty on a military base. It's very easy to do, and they have way more training than the SWAT team, way more training than a SWAT team. And I don't understand why we have cities in the United States, not even cities, like towns of like 4,000 people or less that have a SWAT team. Why do they have a SWAT team? If you have a city of 4,000 people or less, why do you have a SWAT team? You don't need an APC. You don't need a tank. You don't need all this other nonsense. You don't.
No.
And I don't get it. And somebody tried to like justify the whole APC thing. They was like, oh, well, they need them. I'm like, why do they need them? Are they going to take the APC into incoming fire? Is that what they're going to do? Because if that's what they're going to do, then yeah, that's totally valid. But I've never seen a SWAT team ATV drive into fire. You drive to the place you're supposed to get to outside the line of fire, and then you start stacking and you start doing your strategy and you go there. And somebody else tried to say, well, what if you need like a mobile command center? You never put a command center in the line of fire. That is stupid. Like,
and it's not going to be a big truck, like a van. It's not going to be a armored thing. It's nowhere near as expensive.
And it's usually, if you're going to have a mobile command center, it's not going to be anywhere near where they're going to get possibly shot at. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you're just basically telling them to cut the head off the snake.
Yeah. It's got all the satellite antennas and stuff. Like, oh,
yeah.
Shoot this thing.
Yeah, so it's because civilians, they don't understand the way that the military is supposed to operate and the way the police are supposed to operate. The police get this really weird reverence that, and actually so does the military too. We get a lot of reverence for stuff, but it's like, listen, I never consider myself a hero when I joined the military, and so when people thank me for my service, it's awkward to me. I'm like,
me too. Yeah.
I'm like, thanks, I guess, but I guess also you're welcome. But it's just like it's weird to me because it's just what I do. Like, what do you do for a like the civilian person? Like, what do you do for a living? You know, should I thank you for that? Like, that's just what I did. For a amount of time, and I knew what I was signing up for, and that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. Like, yes, I could have been in situations to like do some heroic stuff, but that's what I wanted to do. And I think that most people don't really seem to they don't get that. But there's also people that are out there that are seeking the glory. I'm not seeking glory. I don't want the glory.
Those guys are dangerous.
Yeah, and those are the guys. Some of those guys become police officers, and that's part of the problem. So they want to kick down doors.
And that's what I think. And how do we? But I mean, so to me, right? That's not a problem that can be fixed, right? That's not a systematic thing or a systemic problem. That's like us because that's a people problem, right? That's a system problem is a thing where we're like, well, if we implement this rule or we change our training or we do things differently or we change the structure, that's something that can be fixed, or it's a problem that's in place because of those things. To me, that's systemic, right? If it's a problem that's there because we're creating it, that's a problem that can be fixed because we just need to fix the system and get it right, which is never perfect, and we just need to make adjustments and tweaks. But like to me, those dudes are just like the only way to get that would be like better screening, and that's not a systemic. That's like I don't know how to fix that for sure, and it
Well,
is a problem.
yeah. Well, I think I think we can at least we can try to fix it, and I think part of it is obviously better training, and like you
Yeah.
said, better screening as well, and then also just changing the mission of the police officers in America, like totally. Um, when I don't like the term defund the police because it is it puts people's it gets people riled up irrationally. I
Mm-hmm.
think what it should be is to um, move police resources into better served things because
Yeah, but that's
police.
not catchy.
Yeah, it's
It's
not
not catchy.
catchy. Yeah, it's because police officers in America they're doing too many things and they're a hammer. They're not they're not surgical equipment. They're a hammer and they smash things. That's the power that we've given them. So when we send the police to somebody that's having a crisis like a mental breakdown, and you send the police, they're a hammer, and they're just going to smash them. They're not going to try to understand why this person's having a mental breakdown. They're not going to try to understand what they're going through. They just know smash this person, incarcerate them. When the person, what they really could have used is somebody that could have like actually helped them. And then once you smash the person, if you're a police officer, and then toss them in the system has no obligation to rehabilitate them at all. They have an obligation to make them a slave, and that's basically it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So like that's probably a good point to it where I always talk about that from a leadership role too, right? If if you only have like one corrective measure for your Marines, right? If the only thing you can think of to try to like teach and train and mentor and guide these Marines to be better is to yell and scream at them or curse at them or like PT just basically hit them, right? Like you said, with a hammer. If you just come with the hammer every time, um, not every problem is a nail,
Yeah.
and sometimes you need other tools in your tool bag so that way you can assess the situation, figure out the right tool, and use that tool for that situation. Some people don't respond to the hammer. Some people will respond to the hammer. So you have to figure that out based on the person. And maybe what I'm picking up that you're saying is sort of like we need to figure out how to train them to be better able to determine which tool it is, and then obviously provide them with the tools they need to do those things.
Well,
Um,
yes, that's part of what I'm saying, but I'm also saying that we should not be sending them on all of these things because they're just trying to do too many things. Like, let me give you a perfect example. If I get into a car accident, why do I need somebody with a firearm on them to help me out? I don't, not at all. But every single time there's a car accident, what do you see? One, two, maybe three police officers there at the scene, along with an ambulance and fireman or whatever. But there does not need to be a police officer in that situation at all, unless the situation is dangerous. But by their own like codes of conduct, they have to go on site to deal with. I'm like, why are you doing this? If there's a crazy person that wants to jump off of a bridge, they send somebody with a gun to help them. Like, are they really the best person to send there? You know,
Call an EM,
say again.
send an ambulance, send an EMT, right? Like it's
Yeah.
more of a person to be suited for that. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, let's reduce the amount of funding that we're giving to these police departments and put them towards people that can actually deal with those certain problems. Because yes, when it comes to like actual violence against citizens, yeah, definitely send a police officer. If somebody's kicking somebody's ass, or threatening them with violence, or shooting somebody, or whatever, any kind of violence you want to think of, yes, definitely send a person with a firearm to deal with that situation. But when it's like things that can be talked through, or just to investigate something, you know, let's let's do that instead of having the possibility of some guy that has seen way too much bad shit, that's a police officer that has a gun, and then all of a sudden he sees a kid with a fake gun, and then he shoots him, because that's happened multiple times, and there's been no repercussions for those people, because they're protected by qualified immunity.
You mentioned investigations. Like, do you think there should be a different group that handles like non-violent specific investigations into stuff? Like,
100%,
uh,
yes.
what's that?
100%, yes, I do.
Yeah, so like not police force, some other kind of investigative force that handles like fraud and theft and things like that.
Yeah, I 100% I do, because I don't think you need somebody to have the threat of violence. That's what when a police officer, at least, I'm sorry, let me rewind. If you're a person that's like me, if you're brown, all right, to be just 100% honest, when you see police officer, the option of violence is always there. Of losing your life is always there. So maybe to you or to people that aren't brown, it might not have occurred to them. But to me, the option of violence and me losing my life for any small infraction is always there. When if you send somebody else out to just come talk and do whatever, even for just like a traffic ticket, like
Yeah.
why do I need an armed person to write me a ticket? Unless you want to sit there and say, "Oh, if somebody writes me a ticket, I'm going to kill them." How? Like
Yeah.
the I don't even
The
understand that line of thinking.
So the only argument I would have would be that I would have to look at the numbers and see how many cases of like a car being pulled over does the highway patrolman or whatever get shot just like walking up to the car. I'm pretty sure it's pretty low.
Yeah, well,
Pretty,
police deaths overall have been so incredibly low over the years that you can look up the graphs of it, but it's like police officers are they are not getting shot or even violence being done towards them at any sorts of the levels that the media or any other um it's probably not what you think it is.
yeah.
It's been a downslope, just like violence has been on a downslope for many years. And I think that the problem that a lot of police officers have, and this is something that somebody I know personally said, that his job when he's out on patrol is to get home safe. And I'm like, that's not your job. You're when I was a Marine, my job was not to get home safe. My job was to get the mission done.
Yeah.
So
And the mission was to get home.
yeah, so and a police officer's, as far as I'm, a police officer's job in America is to protect and serve. But if your whole thing is I need to get home safe, then you're going to use whatever means you need to get home safe, and it's through egregious acts of violence, which we have seen in America time and time again. Then that's what you're going to do, and I think that mindset needs to change. But let's also just remove them from that situation. Where if they think they might get in danger from a crazy person, let's have somebody that is better equipped to deal with somebody that's having a mental health crisis, and deal with that. And yeah, like if you need to send a police officer because they're being violent, then do that. But I think we'd be better served as Americans, as the world in general, to really have somebody that's better well equipped to deal with somebody that's having a mental health crisis, because that's what
So
most
you can
people are
almost,
dealing with.
like a traffic, going back to the highway patrol pullover thing, you can almost create like a traffic enforcement or a driving enforcement force that has vehicles, right? And they're going to pull people over. They still have the lights and the sirens and all the other stuff, but they wouldn't have the guns. Probably have like an ASP and martial arts training to be able to like defend themselves in a situation that comes up
Yeah.
at a car. But as soon as it gets to where it might be a violent situation, like you radio the police, like, hey, you guys need to come out to the situation because I'm not equipped for this, and this went to that level, and I'm gonna go ahead and stay back and be here in case you need me, but one more car kind of situation. But their primary role being, hey, you're going too fast, you blew a stoplight, like, hey, you realize these are things for us to all keep each other safe, this is why these rules are in place, let's enforce that still, but there's no need for to assume violence and make it be the same people, like you said, where it's someone who was patrolling last week and is now handing out traffic tickets.
Yes, and the problem that there's going to be somebody that's going to listen to this and be like, well, what if the person that's in the car, well, this is like the stupid strawman argument, what if they just pull out a gun and shoot the person that pulled them over? Well, it's like, well, it would not have saved a police officer either with a gun. If they pulled somebody over that was a police officer and the person that got pulled over just shoots the guy, unless the police officer at all times is like has a gun on the person, even then they can still get shot and die. Like seriously, like you can't remove the risk from people. But what I can tell you though is that if you have somebody that is better trained to deal with actual people problems and like non-violent crimes, I think we'll be better served as as a society, because like we just said, we just keep throwing hammers at people. Like we're not all nails. We're nuanced people. We could have had a bad day. We could have just sped on accident. Yeah, write the ticket if you need to write a ticket. Even though I have problems with traffic tickets, but write the ticket. But it shouldn't need to be where just because you think you saw some guy reach too fast for his pocket, then you got to fucking unload 9 rounds into him, because that's happened on video. But if you remove the gun from the situation, you're good.
Okay, not a bad idea. I like it.
Yeah, it's a radical idea, I guess. But
I mean, we seem to be a podcast for pretty radical ideas. Let's put 6,000 people in the House of Representatives.
yeah. And to me, like when you first said it, it seemed at first listen ridiculous, but when you broke it down, I understood what you're talking about. And you definitely changed our mind on that.
And I think that this is the same way, where like this is a lot, like which your idea of really refining down what the job is, right, of the police force, that specific task, that moniker, that name, the ones we give the guns to, for the communities, and then the other tasks that they're doing, like, and the problem I see, like initially, right, if it's me and you trying to solve this tomorrow, is I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what that list of tasks is. What are the missions we're giving them all over the place that maybe you could go, yeah, we could move that one out and create a new group that does it. So that to me is the analysis that would need to be done, but it's not that hard. It's just work. Like someone could do that work.
Seriously. I mean, like and obviously this is not like the be all end all solution, because I think that before what I'm talking about happens, there needs to be a whole lot of other work that needs to be done.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and the other work needs to deal with like actually having proper funding for mental health in America, actually dealing with the homeless crisis, actually dealing with drug addiction in America, actually dealing with all these other various issues, dealing with poverty. All of these things that I just said would have a serious impact on crime in America. But the fact that in America we're not willing to deal with any of those issues at all, and then we just keep having these armed people try to deal with that, and just to have them deal with it from day to day. This is one of the things that I learned from various police officers, is that they don't even deal with police officers like the military. Like if me and you deployed, we don't deploy for like that long. Like maybe a year, maybe 18 months. That's a stretch.
And that's a long one.
That's a long one. All right. But we have people that are police officers or in law enforcement in general that are basically deployed for years at a time. Years at a time. They get no breaks. They can shoot somebody one day, be back on the beat within a couple of weeks, and it's just how is this even a viable solution for anything? It seems incredibly stupid that we're not giving the police officers the amount of time that they would need to deal with mental issues that would come up with dealing with high stress situations on a daily basis, like somebody that is deployed would be.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases, again, TV shows and the few cops that I know, like a lot of them say in those situations, like, I just want to get back to doing the work because they feel like they're doing something important and helping the community. It's like I gotta get back out there and do stuff, but
It's not that. Yeah.
con- consider that that person might not have the right mindset too. Like, if you want to get back out there and shoot more people, like that's maybe not the right person for this job because you're that person seeking glory and just I want to do more. Like you need to do your fair share and take your time and deal with this and rotate to a different function. And maybe that's how those would work. They'd all be a part of a law enforcement structure, but different functional things. And the police forces, like I said, has weapons. And you might be like, hey, you did have an incident. It was a good, you're perfectly within your rights and safe to do so. They say good shoot, they say, or whatever, but we're going to put you in this other department for a while, no weapons, doing some
100%.
other
Yeah.
help out, like, hey, get your head right. And then you can come back to it if we, find it later. So there's totally a way to make it work. But like you said, those other problems are affecting their daily work, could help the situation too.
Yeah, and I like the rotating thing was actually an idea I had as well. Was like, yeah, doing like rotate him out, like to whatever other kind of line of work, and just to have them. Well, it's also like it's the militarization of the military because I'm sorry, the militarization of our law enforcement because these people like I think we talked about it before. The Grossman guy. What was the guy's first name? Something Grossman. Lee Grossman.
Mark.
The guy that did like the warrior training for the military for the law enforcement. You mentioned his book.
Yeah. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like having the warrior mindset.
Yeah.
Listen,
Dave Grossman.
Dave Grossman. There we go. Thank you. If you're in law enforcement, you're not a warrior. You don't go to war. If you think you're going to war, it's against your own citizens. You simple-minded fuck. Like these are your citizens that you're supposed to be protecting and serving. Like, and that's why I really don't like that whole we need to have more guns. We need to be like the no. You don't need to be like the military. You need to be peace officers. Like,
I mean, but you have to admit there are certain segments of our society that is very militant themselves too. There's, you know, any illicit thing that's going on. So like mob time frame would have happened. Now it's drug wars and again, you talk about you remove the drug thing from it, they're going to find something else. It'll be weapons itself. It'll be just the trading of the weapons. It'll be finding other drugs that aren't made legal or something. But there are portions of the community that are going to be very violent and against it, and that's who they're at war with in order to protect the rest of the society. And I think that's the way he pitches it and the way it's supposed to be. The problem is they don't wear uniforms. Like we don't know who those people are. It's hard. It's harder for the police force to decipher between the groups, and that's never going to change. That's not going to be a thing that can be fixed. Like we can't. I mean, some of them wear uniforms, but like what bandana they're wearing that day doesn't necessarily make it that much easier for a police officer.
yeah, and what you talking about, like the militarization of like part of the population. Like I don't like that either. Like I don't like it when COVID-19 first happened and they were talking about like we need to defeat the invisible enemy. Like what the fuck are you? To me, I was like, what are you talking about? We need to cure the virus. Like this is not. It's not a war. This is not it's not a war. I don't like the way that America has been so military. And don't get me wrong, the military has its purpose. Obviously, I was in the military. But to apply these military terms to these mundane things is not appropriate. It's not appropriate at all.
We do have an unnatural habit in American society is to do that with stuff. You're like the war on this, the war on that. It's like the war on my waist right now is the one I'm dealing with.
Yeah, and I just it's weird because I think for the vast majority of the population, they're just like, oh, it's just a thing you say, but it's not just a thing you say. These words have meaning. When you say a war, that means things, especially like when my brothers and sisters have died in wars, and that we have a clear enemy. We're supposed to be the good guys, and to apply these terms to like these things that you can't actually fight with bullets or bombs or anything else. I don't understand the usage of it, and I think that the words. I'm not going to go so far as like to get on like the whole like gender pronoun thing but words do matter on a certain level, and these are very serious terms when you talk about wars and warriors, because that's a warrior is somebody that goes to war. That's the definition.
And I think like so, yeah, kind of sidebar talked about it a couple times, but if we had a gender neutral third person pronoun in the English language, there'd be no problem. But that's
Yeah.
an English problem because we don't have one. So there's no way for them to just be non-specific and not care who it is we're talking about.
What? Hold on. Well, it's kind of weird though. So we sort of do. There are ones that people aren't comfortable with. Like if I called you or a female a fucker, I was talking about them, right? Or if there's other terms that we can use. Sorry, that was a vulgar one, but there are terms that we do use that are gender neutral. Um, when it comes to like the whole gender neutral thing, I don't know anybody. I don't think I know anybody that is transgender. But if you tell me, whatever your name is and whatever you'd like to be called, if you say something that I don't want to call you, like if you tell me I identify, if you tell me your name and you say, I prefer my gender pronoun is Z or something like that, like I'm not going to call you Z. I'll call you by your name. Um, I'll call you just anytime I refer to you, it'll be by your name. And
Yeah,
uh,
the issue isn't in interpersonal relationships generally, right? It's generally not like me and you talking when it becomes a problem. It's if I was writing an instruction book or I was writing a thing about a character and I don't actually care. It could be anyone you plug into it. Say we're going to play a game and it's like whoever the player of that game is needs to do XYZ. We're having this conversation about how we're writing out the script on it or something for a game we're writing.
mm,
I don't care who the player is. I don't want to say he. I don't want to say she. I can't. There's no word I can use for an individual, not the whole group, but that individual player that doesn't tell me a male or female.
yeah,
And if you say
well,
they, you're talking about all of the players.
I was gonna say you could say it, but generally speaking, that's like, well, it could be what? Yeah, because English is weird. I got you on that one.
That, we broke our own freaking language on this particular topic. It's there's not a word for it. It's kind of frustrating.
Well, there are words in other languages for like for a third gender, but there's also like the whole gender thing. Like, I think the problem is in English and just in general when you start speaking about gender, it's easy to muddy the waters because if you, for me, most gender specific names and stuff like that, it gets tied to sexuality on some level, and I don't care about that. I
Yeah.
don't care what you do to somebody else or what somebody else does to you. I don't. I really don't. Say again?
As long as you both agree.
Yeah, exactly. As long as with consent, I don't care. And so, if you tell me that, you're whatever, I'm just like, what? Why do I care? Like, I care about you as like, if I know you, I care about you as a person. Um, and that's when it becomes a little bit different. But when people are demanding these new gender pronouns, um, and it's just like you can demand it all you want, but if I don't actually know you, these things are just abstract things. Like I can't put any sort of mental time into this where it's just like, yeah, like if we had a personal relationship, it'd be totally different. But you can't demand to me. So this is what I'm talking about. If I'm walking down the street and I see somebody who I perceive as a man or a woman, and I call them the wrong thing, and they get angry with me, and they say I'm this, that, or whatever, what I didn't say to them, it's like, whoa, I don't actually fucking know you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're assuming that I should know whatever you are demanding that I call you, but I don't know you. You know what I mean? Like, and it's another thing that I have a problem with when we talk about like allies. Holy shit, we're going way off topic. Anyway, when we talk about like allies for the LGBTQ plus community, like you can ask for allies all you want, but I don't understand how you can demand that I be an ally of you when I don't fucking know you. You could be a total piece of shit. You can be a lesbian that also believes that the Holocaust didn't exist. I don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can't demand that I'm your ally when we have had no personal relationship at all. So yeah, if after we became friends or whatever, then yeah, that's way different. But you can't just demand that I'm your ally when I don't know shit about you. That's my own personal view.
No, I mean, and it's not far from the way I look at it, where I don't think that, in my point of view, that the ally concept and that like specific support for this thing or whatever like needs to be addressed. If we said that if everyone was just treated with the same equal and fair opportunity to do whatever it is that they want to do, as long as they don't hurt anybody else,
Yeah.
no need for any of it, right? If we go back to that one really basic fundamental concept, golden rule kind of thing, where you're like, look, just I don't care. Like, if you're not hurting someone, be who you want to be. Do whatever you want to do. But like, to then expect me to do something else specifically for that, that's now you're expecting me to know or understand, and that's unrealistic. And I think like you said, the in passing perception stuff does get frustrating a little bit, because there are norms. There are like things that we can expect when you look at a thing or whatever and understand what it is. Like, you show me a purple dot on the wall, I'm gonna look at it and go, it's purple. But if I'm kind of partially colorblind and it's actually mostly red, I'm like, well, I didn't know that it was mauve and not taupe. Like, I can't see that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So if it was 1972 and I had long hair and big earrings, you would think I was a female. But maybe I'm just a dude who was the first guy who got his ears pierced because it wasn't really common in the 70s and having long hair. So it's like, if you outside or especially if you choose like to look for a different gender than you specifically are, but then want to still identify as your own, like I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let me just to like, because people, what we just said, especially me, might have made people mad. Um, I will always advocate and I will always vote for everybody to have equal rights. Everybody to have equal rights. Okay, so I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody. We should all have equal rights. All right. I just wanted to say that because people might think that I'm some fucking weird homophobe or I'm against like trans people. I'm not against any of that shit. We all deserve equal rights.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, my point on it was like, we shouldn't even need to be having
No.
these advocacy conversation. Like, I shouldn't have to be fighting for people's rights to be who they want to be, but we do, right? And I guess I didn't really follow up with that part of it, where yes, absolutely fight for those rights. You should have equality. Just don't think that you should get something more or something special than anybody else because you're special. We're all special. We all are individuals, and we all deserve equal opportunities to do everything. But like, don't expect more than anybody else, I guess is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I think. Well, that's gotta be careful with that one too, though.
Why?
Well, because I'm thinking about like in California when people were talking about homosexual couples getting civil unions, and
Mm-hmm.
then people were saying they were getting special rights. But I'm like, no, well, fuck, god damn it. I'm thinking about it because actually had to go through the civil union thing. I actually wanted to get a civil union, so actually sort of this is a terrible example. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm only saying this. Look, anybody that they should be able to get married. All right, if you want to get married, you should be able to get married. And the reason why I kind of hesitated there is because in California, so I've been. This is my 10-year anniversary with my girlfriend. Being there for a fucking long time, longer than most people that I know that have been married. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
yeah. So, um, I don't want to get married ever again. But I do want to share my benefits with my girlfriend. But I can't because we're not married. So I was looking up a civil union, and so you can only get a civil union if you are gay or you're over the age of 65. It's the only time you can do it. So it's technically a special status for those two groups, but it's not extra anything. It's a special status for those two groups that I cannot as a straight man acquire.
Because they just expect you to do the legal process of marriage, which is to them the same thing because you're young enough or something, and
Yes.
marrying a woman,
which I'm not going to do. So
Yeah.
unless there's one special circumstance where I would do it, but it's an extreme circumstance. So yeah.
Yeah. So then it does feel like it's more, right? It should be fair and the same. So either everybody should be able to do civil unions and it counts the same as a marriage, or everybody can get married and they should have the same level of access without the additional restrictions. Because it sounds like maybe there's a whole bunch of extra stuff that comes legally, especially with the title of marriage, right, compared to civil union.
It's very similar, but they should have just the government fucked up on this one. They should have just made it marriage from the get go. They should not. There should have never been a civil union. I think that the fact that it's two separate things is kind of stupid. I just want to share resources. That's all. I don't care what the fuck you call it. I just want to, if you called it a dildo, I don't care. I would enter into a dildo with my girlfriend to share resources. So because
I'm a,
it's mainly for me personally. It's a I just want to be able to share my medical benefits, and that's basically it. But I can't because my girlfriend, she's had 3 open heart surgeries. She's gonna have another one before you know within probably the next 10, 20 years. It probably won't open heart anymore, but she's definitely gonna have to have her a heart valve replaced. And if she got sick and our heart started failing on her and she had to lose her job and she lost her job because she couldn't work, then what am I supposed to do? I can't put her underneath my insurance because we're not married, but we've been together for for 10 years. It's ridiculous.
yeah, there should be something for you.
Yeah.
We went
Wow.
off topic again.
We did. Sorry. It's interesting. I can guarantee you that people listening to this, they probably got educated on what we just talked about because they probably had no idea about civil unions or benefits or anything like that.
And that's what we're talking about. Like, see, I didn't know much about that, and you taught me something. So we're still going back and forth.
But we all got to wrap it kind of soon, even though I didn't talk about everything I wanted to talk about. But it's okay.
Let's find a way to. I mean, we keep finding ways to kind of shape stuff into the main topic. So we'll still hit those topics. Just make sure to keep them so we can talk about them later.
Yeah, I definitely am because I want to talk about other stuff about racism and then the other stuff about what happened. Actually, we got a little bit of time. So, can you explain? You know about the 25th Amendment, right?
Mhm.
Can you explain to the listeners what the 25th Amendment is and how it's applicable to what happened, well, over the past couple of months, really?
Yeah. So it was primarily written in order to make it so that in the event that the president didn't specifically die, like was incapacitated or was in a coma or something for an extended period of time, would be able to be like officially removed from that position so that the vice president could take over for however long that period took. So it gave some flexibility to it, basically like, hey, y'all can make the determination of if you just need to have the vice president take over for either permanently or for a period of time based on the ability for the president to be able to do the job. So I'd have to double check. The determination is basically made by the cabinet and then ratified by the Senate. I'd have to double check, but I think that's how it works. Like we say, we all agree, and then we send it over and they go, yep, okay, we received your document. They can ask for additional proof or whatever, send it back, but I don't think it'd be one of those things like a confirmation. They would still have to vote to decide so if you were like in a situation where they didn't agree, it's like a Democratic Senate and then the president is Republican, they may not ratify that, or maybe they would because they want to remove him. But it's a double edged sword because you're just going to get the other Republican. So, I mean, kind of. So in this case, they could, and you still have Mike Pence. So it's like they're both very much agree with each other on a lot of topics, but it's also for a very short period of time. But I think it would be in this case be more of a symbolic gesture, right? Like I think that was a big part of what a lot of people are talking about is just do it to show like this is not okay, and we don't agree that the decisions you're making and the way you're talking and the things that you're saying are the way that you're supposed to behave. So something's got to be going on. I think in this case, because he seems to still maintain all of his faculties as far as being able to still function, like it's primarily written for like if they're in a coma, if still alive, that portion was written for in a coma basically, or completely incapable of thinking or acting or talking, and all of those things are still happening. I think you would have to have a doctor say that like specifically some kind of mental capacity is limited or something in order to really have it justified enough for the Senate to agree with you if the cabinet wanted to do it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been tossed around more than a few times, especially recently. It was tossed around like months ago, really, and now it's just like it's ratcheting it up to remove him from office, only because um, when I heard it's like basically being unfit for office. That's maybe it's like an interpretation of the actual 25th. Maybe I should actually look up what the actual words are for the 25th Amendment,
Yeah,
but
I can do that while you talk.
yeah,
I got a copy.
but yeah, that's one of the main reasons why they keep bringing it up is that an interpretation of it, if not the actual words, is if a president is unfit to serve his office, it is a avenue to remove that person from office. And what we've seen over the past couple of days, well, yesterday really is, but really it's like leading up from months ago. You know, from President Trump, I'm sorry, Donald Trump, refusing to really denounce white supremacy in America when he was talking about the Proud Boys to stand back, stand by. When he had a rally yesterday, and he said after the rally, you know, he literally told his constituents to march down to the Capitol building and make sure that Mike Pence does his job and show strength. And then they showed their strength yesterday by storming the Capitol building and stopping the Electoral College from counting. So you have the actual amendment up.
I do. It's really long.
Oh, is it really long?
So, and by really long, I mean it's probably I don't know, it wouldn't take that long. So, the gist of it is that it would be this really big, weird back and forth, right? So, if the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers, the executive department, basically the cabinet, right? They send a letter to the president pro temp, so send it to the Senate saying is not able to discharge duties. All they have to do is say that, right? It doesn't have to say why. Then the vice president is now the president for however long of a period is necessary, and it ends whenever the president sends a letter to the president pro temp himself, also saying no longer any inability to be able to do my duties, and I'm able to resume or whatever. Then it immediately switches back just based on the letter from the president. So then, within 4 days of that letter arriving to the president pro temp, the cabinet and the vice president can again send a letter saying no, still not able to.
Holy shit!
Yeah, you have 4 days basically to like nope, no, it's still not okay. Then it's basically decided by the House.
Wow. Okay, that's all Democratic run right now. So
yeah, it's all written in there. Wow. That's what I'm saying. It's pretty long. I was like, trying to read it really fast.
I didn't know how long it was, but yeah, that's yeah. I think that there is some argument to be made to do it now, only because of what, not only, but mainly because of what happened yesterday and the fact that Donald Trump is still using the wrong words in response to what happened yesterday. Every single time I've seen him on TV or in tweets since the attempted insurrection on the Capitol building, he's always started with, "This is a fraudulent election. I won the election," or something to that manner. And this is further inciting these terrorists to attempt to overthrow or to stop our democratic process of just doing the work that the people voted them to do, and that's just terrorism. So
the rereading or like reading the last little bit I didn't finish as I tried to like quickly scan it. I think the biggest hiccup would be that kind of like back and forth that happens and the amount of time it would happen. So say tomorrow they decide, they send it over, and he responds quickly, and like the next day he sends a letter that says, "No, I'm fine. I can still do my job," right? And then they have 4 days, so probably wouldn't take as long if they were really serious about it. So say 2 days later. So we're now already halfway between now and inauguration day, basically, right?
Yeah.
So then at that point it goes to the House or to Congress in general, right? It's both, but it's going to start at the House. They technically have 21 days to decide. So at that point, we'd be beyond inauguration, and everybody would just say, you know what, it's just leave it alone.
Well, I think they would move with some expediency, but I think one of the other main problems is that even if you removed him from office, he still has a platform that I mean, Twitter removed him, they suspended his account for a while, and they removed some tweets, which is good. But he still has the ear of like OAN and sort of. I don't think Fox News basically disowned him at this point, um, and Newsmax, where he can still get on a platform and say whatever he wants. And I think that, uh, hmm, fuck it, I'll say it because I'm not a Marine anymore. I think that he should be more than just removed from the office. I think he needs to serve some. He needs to sit in timeout for a while, probably in a jail cell, because of what he incited. And I think that allowing this person to continue to incite his followers is a detriment to America. This is literally tearing America apart. I cannot believe that in my lifetime I've watched this happen. This is the country that I fought for, and to see these people um, mutate the word patriot into these terrorist groups is incredibly sad and shameful to me, because they don't even understand what being a patriot actually is. Like, you don't. Somebody said it probably better than me. I forget who it was, but you don't teach patriotism. You don't tell somebody these are the things you do to become a patriot. What you do is you create a country in which you become a patriot because you believe so strongly in the strength of this country and what they can do for you and the world. That's how you become a patriot. It is not through these nefarious means of, you know, saying that if you don't do this, you're or some compulsory thing. Like that's not how it works. That's not how it's ever worked.
In our life, can you remember a moment where it seemed like everybody was super patriotic?
9/11.
Yeah, right after, right?
Yeah.
No one told everybody you need to put flags on your trucks, but they were everywhere. It was insane how that felt. Like it was scary, right? And it was like I was in already. You were too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we we're both already active duty. So you're like, I know what this means, and like, oh my gosh, it's intense, and it kind of freaks you out. But like to also see how like resolved everybody got and how much it brought the whole nation together with a focus was kind of was crazy. I mean, and it's a totally different thing to like fake the funk, and rock the flags for because you think that the flag means that you stand for something in a different way. So it's kind of frustrating for me to see that part of it being used in a weird way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, after 9/11 happened, like the country came together. Like, it didn't last very long, but we came together for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple months.
Yeah.
And it was even though tragic events happened. Um, I think it's really a watershed moment for American history because everybody was just like, yeah, let's come together and let's make things better. And you're not seeing that today. You're not like that. Those days are long and gone because we have been taught division from both sides. It's not just Donald Trump. Definitely, he's a catalyst, a major catalyst to this. But the other side of it is that the people on the left have ignored poor white people for decades, if not longer. They've ignored all of their pleas for help. They've ignored their struggles, and they decided to pander to a whole different subset of people. Because they thought that their needs were more important than their needs, and that is a huge problem. That I think that so when Donald Trump first came up, like I understood why he became so popular. I understood that people were ignoring poor white people. Like if you were working in a coal mine and was it NAFTA? Like they sent your job somewhere else, or you're working in a factory and they sent your job somewhere else. Yeah, you're gonna be fucking mad. And the fact that no Democrat was stepping up to the plate and helping you out, that they were likely part of the problem of how they shipped your jobs overseas, then yeah, you're gonna be angry. And then they're not giving you the proper amount of benefits to subsidize you losing your job. I totally get it.
And for retraining you to another career or anything, there's nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing. This is why we can go back to UBI if you want, but UBI. I'm just saying. At least it give you some time. to if you need to retrain, because I actually don't believe strongly at all in retrain. I believe in some retraining, but if you're going to tell a coal miner to become a coder, you can take several seats. So
Yeah, but I mean, so like there should be options. So a coal miner might not be able to be, a white hat, but they could probably become a welder, which is a task that's still a local job that's needed always. Like welding is not a thing. We talked about the other day, professional, vocational type skills. Just offer up a vocational certificate. Like, hey, you can go learn a job. You pick. We don't care. Here's community college vocational certification certificates. Go get something. Don't care. We'll pay for it, but go get a new trade because we forced this stuff to kind of go overseas, and we knew that was going to happen because they do that when they make those decisions.
oh yeah.
This is what's the result of the decision we're making. What are we doing about those impacts? Nothing. That's not okay.
No, it's because they're a lot of those people that are making those decisions are getting kickbacks from the companies that they know are gonna profit from the decisions that they made. So, and that's a whole other problem. Is like, how do you get corruption out of the government? And there are some decent ideas on how to do that. I think I talked about it before, like the whole Patriot dollars or whatever. Basically, just giving everybody $100 to give towards their candidate of choice, and it could definitely wash out a lot of this money that corporations give to candidates.
Yeah,
some, not
help.
all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it helped fix some problem, but I think there's obviously more steps, but that's not a bad one to start with.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta start somewhere on some level.
All right. I was gonna ask a question. Do you know if anyone has ended the war on terror? Are we still doing that?
We're still doing it. Oh, well, apparently it ended yesterday because
Well, because I was gonna say, so does that mean we're still a nation at war?
we've been at war for the longest time, like since
So then, the
2002.
second part of the question would be, how do you define treason in the United States?
Yeah.
Acts against a person, right?
Say that again.
Treason, unlike in many countries which had a monarchy or have a specific head, and a lot of the times treason was written as, like, when we decided to secede, right? It was a treasonous act against the king himself, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's not how ours is written. So
It's not. Ours is like, it's against the actual government, right? It's not against a specific person.
the United States of America.
Yes, that's why when I said treason on the last podcast, that I was very serious about that, because there's treason
So
against the government.
you talk about some kind of punishment for it. So punishment for treason during a time of war.
Yeah, it's death.
It is.
Yeah, people were asking me about that, like about sedition and treason and other things. I was like, all these roads lead to death. Like, these are not um, light topics for people. I don't know why I keep hearing that noise. Um,
I couldn't tell if it was mine or yours. I don't know.
no, I think shit, it is mine. Um, yeah, it's literally death, and it's not going to happen, obviously, but it it's legally it can happen. So
There is an argument for a prosecutor should they have chosen to do so. Like, if it was Law and Order, you're like, oh, there's enough pieces here to put a kind of a story together, but it won't go. So they wouldn't take the case, right? Because they know they won't win.
but I mean, people have been set to death for lesser crimes.
Yeah,
People have been set to death for that were innocent.
well, yeah, lots of people, but not him, and not someone who was a sitting president. So
Yeah, I honestly, that's what those are my thoughts, not your thoughts. I think that he has committed treason upon America by inciting violence against members of Congress, against Congress as a whole, and even Mike Pence, the sitting vice president. Yeah, I mean, that I'm not mincing words at all. That's literally what he said. He told them to go march down there and show your strength, and that's literally what they did. To me, that more than meets the definition of treason.
there was a line I read too that specifically mentioned by the president that the vice president could specifically like not certify stuff. Basically, if they
Yes.
just wanted to, that was stated. And then vice president was like, "No, I'm just gonna do my ceremonial duties." Basically, was that like the way the conversation went?
Well, no, he wrote actually. Well, he said that, but then he actually wrote a long letter that came out yesterday, earlier in the
Oh,
morning yesterday. You can probably find it. It's on his Twitter page, on Mike Pence's
yeah,
Twitter page.
I'll check it out.
Yeah,
I just kind of got a kick out of that. I was like, "Go, Mike. That's kind of." Let me just. Can we just finish this? Can we just be done?
yeah, like he was asking him to commit a federal crime,
Yeah.
and Donald Trump's legal issues are going to start on January 21st. And I've said it for the longest time. Like I don't think he's prepared for all of the mountains of shit that are going to come his way, and he keeps
Mm.
piling on this mountain of shit. And these are just, and he's already talking about. He's talked about it for months now about pardoning himself. But I'm like, how can you pardon yourself from a crime that nobody is charging you for? Like people are waiting on purpose because they know that you have the power of the presidency and you can pardon people. Maybe yourself, which is sort of fucking gray area to me, super gray area. But you definitely should not be able to pardon yourself from future crimes.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah, and it would set a terrible precedent in America if he could just self pardon himself from all crimes ever that he committed. Like that, I don't think people understand how dangerous that would be. That basically be giving any president ever the power to commit any crime that he wanted to and get away with it, or he or she wanted to, or people wanted to, and get away with it. And that is incredibly dangerous. And the people that are on his side that want to say that, it's like, well, okay, let's go down that line. What if you have a far left leaning president that decided to outlaw, I don't know, all Republicans? Let's just throw them all in jail. If it's a crime, who cares? I'll just pardon myself. That this is what can happen.
It's and that's why you can't. Yeah, that definitely doesn't work because and there's nothing specific to it. Like it has to be a specific pardoning of a previous crime or like you could pardon yourself. I could see if like you had a previous crime still on the books. You're like, let's go ahead and just take that one off the books. But like there were no charges really.
Yeah, there's none. I mean, there's people that are like in New York. They're setting up all the dominoes, but they're not going to let those dominoes drop until after he's not
Mm.
president anymore. I mean, because that's just to me, it's a smart thing to do because just remove all this once he gets his presidential powers removed, then let it all come down. Like I want him to be held accountable for what he's done to America and what he's done to the America that I love, that I'm
Mm.
more and more on the side of leaving, is he's destroyed it. He's destroyed uh, me feeling safe living here and me feeling safe of my daughter living here. Um, I don't feel safe here right now. I really don't.
Nah, that's terrible.
California is kind of okay, but once I travel the country, it's just like it's kind of sketchy. You know, when I drove back with my daughter from Michigan to California, I went to through Montana, and there was a place in Montana where I'm wearing my mask, and I walk in, and literally on the door of the place it said, "Don't wear a mask. Wear my mask inside because I'm not an idiot." And they were all looking at me so like I was an alien, and I'm just like, and of course they're all white people, you know, and I'm in Montana. I was just like, all right, this is fucking super sketch, but you know, I'm just trying to keep myself safe and you safe, really. The rest of you that are around me, and they were just looking at me like I didn't know what I was doing, that I shouldn't be there. It's just like, dude, like,
Yeah. So is I don't know how much I want to say. So it's pretty funny though because like it's who's a part of it. This group right that's doing it is not so disconnected from it. To understand like my wife saw what was going on with the story. She's actually the first one that told me because I was sitting in the car waiting for her to get out of the dentist's office. She walked in and saw it on like the TV inside the dentist's office. I was like, oh my god, did you see what's going on with this? So then I started looking. So she was raised in Southern Alabama, like she's a country girl, and She was like, these goddamn rednecks.
Yeah,
I was like, you can say that because I'm not one, so it's same thing. I would never say it about somebody, but she's like, y'all making me look bad. She's like, I can't understand why they do think that this is okay. I was like, babe, I don't know. And we can't even in a 2-hour conversation come to an understanding of why does this make sense. It doesn't.
it doesn't. I mean, well, it doesn't, but it's just the problem is that these people are nearing the bottom. That's the problem. Is that they do not want to be they don't want to be. They don't want to feel like a minority in America. So they're gonna go kicking and screaming when they could just make it better for everybody instead of kicking and screaming. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like if you're white in America, like you're not going to be a majority for very much longer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just hope that the people that are going to become the majority don't treat you like you treated us. Like that's the main thing that they don't really seem to understand is like whoever's going to be the majority is not going to they're not going to toss you in fucking cages. You know what I mean? They're just going to let you. They're likely going to let you live your normal life.
I mean, it wouldn't be like a solo majority, right? But it still would be the largest percentage, I think.
Yeah, it was probably going to be
Wow.
somebody of some Latin descent, you know. But they're not gonna do the way that white folks have done to minorities over the years because we're trying to get past that, and we would like people's help to get past that. And I think it's fear. It's fear of them getting to the bottom, knowing that in the traditional system in America, whoever's at the bottom, the bottom, there's a cage for everybody at the bottom. The cage is there. Whoever fills it, it doesn't matter. As long as you're at the bottom, it's gonna get filled.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It's terrible, though. It's the scary way to put it. I think I've heard it said that way before, and I was probably really close to it several times.
Yeah, and they didn't care your skin tone, right? Your perceived skin tone. Like they didn't. It doesn't matter. Like if you don't have the resources to fight your way out of that system, then you're fucked.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'd have to wrap it up because we're approaching. I didn't expect this to take 3 hours, but this has now been 3 hours.
Yeah. We have good conversations, so we need to hit the points we need to hit. But I think also we'll have to carry some sort of stuff over to another time. But really appreciated the talk today. I think that I know we didn't stay on specifically a topic that was you kind of guiding me through learning something new as much as this was definitely a more interactive back and forth for us today than we normally dealt with. So I think we're approaching the end here of Balanced Exchange for today. Did you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I'm good. I just want to say I hope that America really remembers what the whole idea of America was supposed to be from the get-go. And yes, I understand that we started with slavery and all this other shit, but we also gained a whole bunch of other stuff here in America that's awesome. All right, and it turned into a melting pot of different cultures and people, and we had this long time. Well, yeah, we had some snags, but we kept progressing forward. And over the past 4 years, we've hit a snag, and we're starting to go backwards. So let's keep it going forward, and let's remember that we're all Americans. We all deserve the same amount of respect. We all have problems, but let's come together as a country, and remember we're all human beings. That's all I gotta say.
I would say like it's definitely been a hardship, like you said, a moment where we're stumbling a bit. But my hope and what I kind of see us always doing is we do this from time to time in history. If you look to where hopefully we make this a moment to like rise above, be better than this moment, like learn from it and get better. So that's my hope too, is that we definitely take this struggle that we're going through, trying to figure out how to get past this moment in our societal history and find a way to be better. So maybe this is what makes us do that, right? Like we've been waiting for quite a while for another big push forward and we haven't done it. We've been going forward, but sometimes you have to like stop, plant your feet, and then jump. So we needed. There are quite a few big changes, and I think we've talked about some that we have to do to fix some of the resets we did 60, 80 years ago, which has been our last real big push forward, I think, of positive social movement. I think we've been kind of inching forward and eventually, like you said, stalling out, and we need a big jump forward in order to get going again. So it's my hope that this is kind of the trigger for that.
Hopefully. That's my hope.
All right, brother.
All right. Thanks for the conversation, man.
Later.
Later.